But when you measure it flat, it contradicts that. I'm spitting flat facts and that. And I know you don't like that. Google Maps is flat, it presents elevation profiles like that. I'm a spitting flat earth king. Sentence has a ring, doing my own thing. If earth was a big roast chicken, factually finger licking chicken. We just got the measurements missing. I'm spitting eggs and begs, begging the question lesson. I've said it before, time after time. I'm the spitting flat earth king of rhyme.
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Uncut and After Show. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe. Hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they premiere. There's also a coffee, Patreon, crypto and thanks button in the info box below the video. Speaking of Patreons, I'm going to do a quick shout out to all of you who do support me on Patreon. So, a massive shout of thanks and appreciation to Smith Tools and Purchase, Level Plain Poem, Vitali Z, Colton James, Survive the Spin, Effie Patriot, Thomas van der Zander, Measured Flat, Tiers Morgan, Mitch Kennedy, Rod, The Name's Burley, J Mel's 24, Unamento, Iron 26, Retro Bill, John Kays, Patrick Gunnels, Banter, Hairy Blade, Mobile Max 777, Rob W, Del West Watson, Unbelievable Productions, Blue Ridge Ranger, Abraham Mohammed, Skeptic 936, Texas Mike, Chow Yun Cat, and Dank. So another massive thank you to all of you for supporting me on Patreon. Links to Patreon are below this video. And with that, I will hand across to whoever is in Discord and Google so you can enjoy their dulcet tones while I set up for today's live show. You what, Neil?
I need to see some pictures of this place.
You want me to take my phone with me? I don't even really have a phone with me. Whoops. Knocking things over. Whoops. I mean, I can take the pictures of the inside of a curry house if you like.
Well, I'm trying to figure out is it like a restaurant where there's like nice booths and you sit in the back, or is it like one of those places like in a mall where there's just seats everywhere and people are just sitting down?
I know, it would be in the equivalent of what would have been at some point somebody's house. Most shop fronts are like that in the UK. Like most inner city, not inner city, in town. Most town shop fronts were at some stage houses for the rich, so they're big, but they get converted to shop fronts. Therefore, you're essentially in someone's front room that's been converted into a restaurant with, I don't know, a dozen tables in there. But every curry house in the UK basically looks exactly the same.
Hear, hear. I've seen some nice ones like what Neil's talking about. There's one in Cov called like Turmeric Gold or something, and they do like booths where you're sitting on a floor almost, but it's quite nice, I suppose, if you like that thing.
Sure, but you know what I mean when I say most curry houses are the same. They've got the same colour scheme, they've got the same decor, they've got the same vibe. It's a curry house, right? There's a standard format for a curry house.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. Yeah.
So nobody playing a sitar?
No. They might have that played on the public address system turned into a stereo. I don't know why they all do that as well. They all have the same setup when it comes to their audio needs. They all have a public address system with 1990s plastic speakers. I don't know what it is about this setup. A 1990s public address amplifier and old-fashioned AOA style plastic speakers that are very garish. They all have the same setup. It's like a standard. It's been standardized a long time for curry houses. Oh, you need music? Well, you'll need this set of 1990s AOA speakers and a public address amplifier.
See, when I ate Indian food, it was in a place called Belushi's, and they had a band, like in the middle of the place. Like it felt like you were in India. Nice playing the sitar, nice soft music. I mean, the whole atmosphere was atmosphere adding a lot. And
Some places are nice.
I just remember it was very, very freaking spicy.
You ever been to Kayal, Nathan? You know, at the top of town.
Probably.
It's like Kerala food, isn't it? Like South Indian, like not your traditional Indian place. That's quite nice food.
Okay. Where is everybody? There's nobody in FED Voice. Nobody in Flipside at all.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Don't you still do wasn't it politics on Friday once upon a time?
Yeah, then I got panned for saying the word nigger.
Oh, yeah. Politics.
I say saying. The more accurate term would be repeating. Someone played a clip with somebody being very racist. So in an attempt to defuse the blatant racism of a clip that was being played with the word nigger being used in a derogatory context, I tried to deflate it by trivialising it, and that got me banned.
I think I was there. I think I remember this. Just, I don't even. It's a word. Like, I think it's one of those words as well where it's only offensive if you want it to be offensive to you, and other than that, you know, it's just a word. In England, like, I grew up saying like chinky and stuff like that, and I was told as an older person, "Did you know that's racist?" I'm like, "Is it?" Like, it was just a word I used when I was a kid to say, do you want to eat Chinese food? You go down the chinky. What? Yeah, you know, like, it's only racist when someone makes it racist. That's the point.
We used to call it the same thing. On Friday nights, we get chinks.
Yeah, you'd get a chinky. I mean, meaning you'd get a Chinese takeaway.
I just pulled up a place called Bellucci, and this place looks extraordinary. And it's in the UK. How come you guys never went there?
Sounds Italian.
No, I know it does, right? BLABALUCHI. And it's on 181 Tooley Street, London.
That's because that's freaking miles away. Because that's a day trip.
But it looks gorgeous.
I'm sure it is. A lot of nice places are in London, Neil, but I don't live in London. Like me saying to you, well, there's a lovely restaurant in New York. Why don't you go there, Neil?
Is it that far away? Come on,
Yeah.
I'm 18 hours from New York.
Okay, I'm looking at the pictures though, Neil, and I'll give it to you. That's pretty cool.
No, London's not 18 hours away. But for us, on a small island, if it's more than 25 minutes away, it's a day trip.
I got you. That place
You
looks
can get
gorgeous.
about 45 minutes or so on the train.
On the train, anywhere in London for me is 2 hours minimum in a fast car. If I'm going to get to the centre of London, when I used to go and work at Harrods, it would take me a couple of hours minimum to get there. Most of the time longer, because as soon as you get into London, you crawl along at 5 miles an hour everywhere.
Or you use the underground, which then it becomes a day trip.
No, I had an expense account, so I could afford parking. So I'd park next to Harrods. There's a multi-storey car park next to Harrods. And when I would park in there, you drive in and it had really narrow, like, roadways up the car park. Like, inside the car park itself, it was very narrow. I'd look at the cars that were parked there and go, how the hell did you manage to make your way up this car park without damaging the car? So you'd be in there and there'd be Lamborghinis and Rolls Royce and Bentleys and just nice cars because they could afford the £100 it costs to park there for a couple of hours. It was ludicrously expensive. But when you've got an expense account, you don't give a shit. Like, you don't even look at the charges. You just go in. You're like, yes, this is the closest car park to Harrods. I will be parking here. I still love having an expense account.
What were you doing in Harrods?
I used to work there.
That is a bit la-ti-da, my friend.
I never got paid. My salary came from my actual employer, Cord. But in order to be in there dealing with people, I had to go through all of the same recruitment processes and CRB checks to be on their shop floor with a badge. So I've got a Harrods badge with Nathan written on it. So as far as anybody was concerned, I was an employee. And in terms of the vetting process, I'd been through the entire vetting process of becoming an employee. I just didn't actually receive a salary direct from Harrods. I was paid by the company I work for. But to be on the shop floor, standing next to my product that I was selling to Harrods as and, you know, whatever they call them, retail, I think is the term, retail salesperson. So to be that, temporarily though it was, which I did, you know, reasonably frequently, I'd be in there. And it was just easier. So if I was in there to try and sell them something new, and I happened to be in there as an employee, which I always did, I'd always go in through the employee entrance and with a badge on and get frisked down and have to declare any cash on me, all the normal stuff an employee would have to do. And then I'd walk up, and then obviously you're not immediately like any retail outlet that I was dealing with as a distributor. I would have to wait for the person I needed to contact to be free. So I'd quite often be standing around, and while I was standing around, I could flog a hi-fi to an end user. No problem. Someone would come up and go, this looks interesting. And by the time they'd finished having the conversation, I was sending them over to the till. And somebody else would be like, what do you mean you're going to give me a £30,000 sale? I'm like, well, I don't actually have till access. I'm not, strictly speaking, a true employee. So I need you to process this £30,000 sale, please. And the person would look at me, because they're all on commission, and like piss their pants. I'm like, what? You're giving me 30 grand's worth of sale? Yes, I am. That's correct. I can't take a commission. I'm not being paid by Harrods. But obviously this item's going to sell and they're going to replace it. So I'm delighted that I'll be taking the order to get the replacement at the very minimum when I leave this store today. It might cover my parking. You know what I mean?
Fair play. You've worked abroad as well, ain't you, once upon a time?
That's all I used to do. I used to drive all over Europe as the distributor. So I had two hats at one point. So the company that took on our distribution made speakers. They're a Danish speaker manufacturer. I say Danish, they were actually German, but people don't like the Germans. So they decided to call themselves Danish, which is a fairly common thing. You know, lots of people who deal with Danish manufacturers of stuff in general actually look at the lineage of the company and find out that they're German. But like I say, if you might sneer a little bit with dealing with a German company, unless it's cars.
Oh.
Yeah,
that's really fun. Our speaker brand is German. And I literally say to people, it's German, so, you know, it's reliable.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's German engineering.
But people prefer the Danes to the Germans. It's just European politics. Don't worry about it. But the point was that I would have to go around and flog those speakers as well as my own product as a distributor of the speaker manufacturer. So I was travelling all over Europe, driving around, dealing with my customers, which were dealers, end dealers, that is, let's say they're dealing with customers, end users, and distributors, and studios.
And what made those speakers better?
Testing, I suppose. Dyne Audio is a good
No, they were
testing.
German.
Again?
No, they were German.
They're just well tested, like anything, right? So with those particular speakers, if you look at one part, a tweeter, you could look at the tweeter in their cheapest speaker that costs $200, and then look at the tweeter in their £100,000 speaker, and you'd look at them and go, these look exactly the same. And they were exactly the same. But they were tested. So the tolerances on the tweeter that went into the £100,000 speaker were much, much, much higher. So, for instance, they'd put a 1,000-watt pulse through the tweeter, and if it went bang, it failed. If it survived, then it was potential to go into one of the higher-end speakers. And again, they'd test the frequency response. They'd just run a sweep through it and then measure it. And how close to flat it was would be how likely it would be to go in the various different ranges. So they use the same tweeter, essentially the same tweeter, throughout the entire ranges, from a £300 speaker to a £1,000 speaker to a £5,000 speaker to a £10,000 speaker to a £20,000 speaker, all the way up to 100 grand. But when they were been made, because they're made out of a piece of silk by hand, so some woman would sit and physically mould the shape of the tweeter by hand, and she'd be doing hundreds of them a day, and then they'd get wired up and then tested. So if it tested well, it would go into a high-end speaker. If it didn't, it would go into a low-end speaker.
We was talking about that the other month, I think, weren't it, about processors. Processors are all made the same. And then upon testing, it's decided this is an i3, this is an i5, this is an i7.
Exactly. On a wafer, you've just got all of them being identical. And then upon testing, you might find that the ones towards the outside edge can only hit 5.3 gigahertz, whereas the ones towards the centre can be pegged at 6. Well, you're like, the ones that are at 6 gigahertz are going to go into the high-end processors and get called 14900Ks and KSs, whereas the ones that can't are going to be called 14600s and 14700s, or whatever the lower SKU is. But they're the same chip. They are identical. Same goes for how many cores they've got. You might find that on the lower end chip, the second set of cores, they call them E-cores, can only run at 4 gigahertz. So they go, well, this, even though the bigger cores can run at 6 gigahertz, the smaller ones can't. Therefore, this will have to become a 600 SKU rather than a 900 SKU. And then they just turn down the limit on the upper cores. Well, obviously, that being the case, you can't balance out every single chip. You've got to go by the lowest common denominator. That's to say, you can't suddenly say, well, the high-performing chip section can reach 6 gigahertz, but the low-performing chip section can only reach 4. It's like, well, the spec for a 900 SKU is that all of the small cores hit 4.5. And if they can't, it can't be a higher-end chip. But that means that you might end up with something that's badged to 14600. And if you are prepared to test it and test the limits of the cores, you might find that your big cores actually are equal to, if not better than, some of the highest performing SKUs out there. It's just a case of testing them. And when they decide what is going to make each SKU, they have to test the entire chip. So if one section of the chip is missing a core, like you're supposed to have 8 little cores and only 7 work, well, that automatically means it can only go into the variety that uses 4 little cores, because you're going to have to turn the majority of them off because you haven't got 8 functional cores. So it just means that 3 of them get turned off even though they're perfectly fine, and then the other 4 function as intended on a lower SKU. And so it goes on. So you're just testing them all to see which ones they can be categorized as. Well, it's the same with speakers. A really good drive unit will go into a high-end speaker. That's not to say it's a different drive unit in the cheaper speaker. It isn't. It's exactly the same. It's just it performs to a higher degree when tested. The thing is, with the tolerances on speakers, most people in most circumstances cannot tell the difference. So in a studio, you might be able to tell the difference. So occasionally I'd go in and they'd be using these big Dynaudio studio monitors that were wall mounted, like infinite baffle, and there's nothing behind them, just acoustic treatment around them, and they're mounted in a wall so they look flush. And you'd listen to them and go, wow, they sound fantastic. But that's not to say you couldn't wire up a pair of their 100 or 200 quid speakers on the desk and have them sound equally fantastic, mainly because what's making them sound fantastic is the room that they're in. Now, the fact that you've got an extra 1% in the tolerance of the tweeter doesn't mean it's going to sound better. It's going to sound, or at least in my humble opinion, pretty much the same. That's just how they sound. And then it's just how many more cones you've got to increase the frequency response, i.e. go down to deeper bass. But you can achieve that with a subwoofer. So you could buy their cheap speakers for a couple of $100, bung a subwoofer on, and have high-end, really high-end sound. But most people just aren't aware of that. It's all marketing bullshit. Now, it's not to say that they're lying when they say this speaker's a higher-end speaker, because it's a physically bigger cabinet with more wood and more components, more physical drive units, therefore worth more money. But you could achieve the exact same result by buying a relatively cheap subwoofer and their box that, you know, the majority of the sound's coming out the tweeter. So if the tweeters are the same, what difference does it make? Well, not a great deal is the answer. But that's marketing for you. You know, you need to sell your higher-end product. To a degree, it's the same with a lot of cars. Like, you can buy a high-end car with a 2-litre diesel in it, and you can buy a low-end car with the same engine. Now, are they different? Well, they're the same engine. You know, in fact, the smaller, lighter car's probably faster. You know what I mean? But it won't have reclining electric massaging seats. But as far as car, well, is it a better car? Well, arguably, the smaller, lighter car is better at being a car.
You're telling me what's under the hood doesn't justify if it's better or not?
No. If you've got two identical engines, if both engines are producing 200 horsepower and the same engine, but one's in an A6 and one's in an A3, are you going to tell me that the A6 is better and has a better engine? It doesn't. It's got the same engine.
So you're saying the same goes for freaking speakers? Because I could go pull a cheap ass set of speakers and then go buy a nice set of freaking, let's say, something made in Germany, and it's going to sound 100 times better, Nathan.
Well, not necessarily. I've had plenty of high-end equipment that sounded garbage. Same applies with the equipment itself. So, with most modern electronics beyond about 1980, they reached a point where what they achieved in terms of their output was transparent. That is to say, it's not adding anything. It's just giving you a completely flat response across the board throughout the entire audible frequency range. Then you go, well, what's the difference? Power handling. So you go, okay, so this one's 50 watts and that one's 200 watts. So the 200 watts is better. No, it will go a little bit, not much, a little bit louder. Yeah? Most of the time, whenever you're listening to loud music, most people think, wow, that's loud, you must have a big amp. If you were to test it, you'd probably find it's using 5 watts. So people don't really understand how much power they're actually utilising. So I would flog rich people ginormous amplifiers that could produce a kilowatt of power. Did they need it? No. Most of the time they're using 1/3 of a watt at low volumes. If they turned it up, they might push 5 watts out of this amplifier. It's stupid. So for the majority of people, for the majority of the time, a 100-watt amplifier is all you'd ever need for most tasks.
Do you know anything about the move from valve amps into transistor burst stuff? Like, from what I know about it, it wasn't anything to do with it sounding any better. It was just cheaper to produce.
Absolutely.
Like my example
Transistors are much cheaper.
My guitar amp, I got a JCM 800, which is older than me. I'm 41, and it was seen as the last great Marshall amp, and that was all all valve burst.
Valves have the potential to sound slightly nicer for different reasons, right? In the same way as if you've got a true Class A amplifier, it's always holding power between the rails ready to be delivered, whereas most amps are Class A-B, and they're turning on the power as required for reasons of efficiency. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. Again, so long as the output's basically transparent, who cares? But what a valve amp does that's magical isn't producing completely transparent sound. It's actually quite the contrary. It's producing harmonic distortion. That is to say, if you produce a 20 hertz wave, like really deep bass, and then play it through a valve amplifier and then measure the output, it will put a certain amount of, some people call it saturation, but it's basically just distortion. And that's repeat frequencies higher up the spectrum. So it might be, just for crude terms, if you've got 20 hertz going in, you might get 20, 40, 80, 160 at slightly lower levels based on the original input signal. Well, that's not supposed to be there, right? Harmonic distortion, it's just wrong, it's bad. Distortion is bad. It's not the original signal, but it sounds really nice. Yeah? Like a harmony sounds nice. So harmonic distortion, which is often induced by valves because of their imperfections, can sound pleasant. Now, a really well-designed valve amplifier can be completely transparent. But then, why would you have that over a Class A amplifier? It's like, well, what's the difference? Well, there isn't one. If it's transparent, that means you can't hear it producing any distortion. It's not doing anything. It's just reproducing the sound. Most amplifiers are like that. Where they differ is when they reach the limits of their output. So on a cheap Chinese digital amp, chip amp that you get in most things, it's back to the old, it doesn't have enough power. So if they're only rated at 20 watts, the chances are they can only put out about 5 watts. Well, that's right on the limits of when people want to turn the system up. If it's reaching its limits, it's going to do all sorts of nasty stuff to the signal at high volumes. That's distortion. When you reach its peak output, maybe 5 or 6 watts on a little shitty Chinese digital amp. So what do you need? Well, you need one that's more powerful. 30 watts, 50 watts. Now, those aren't going to give you much more volume. If you were to compare the two, they'd probably be similar in terms of their output level. You know, you're not getting much more volume when you double the output. You get, I think, 3 dB for doubling the power. So 3 dB is nothing. So, you know, to go up by a substantial amount in terms of volume, it is huge amounts of power when you get beyond the point that the limits of your hearing start to kick in. So if you're at 100 dB and it's outputting 10 watts, to get up to 103 dB, what did I just say, 10 watts? You need 20 watts. To get up to 106 dB, you need 40 watts. To get up to 108 dB, you know, you have to keep doubling the power just to put an extra couple of dB out through the speakers. So it does get to the point where if you're listening loud, you need huge amounts of power. But most people aren't listening loud. Most people aren't listening at 100 dB. Far from it. That would split most people's eardrums open in a house, because the house would increase the volume with all the standing waves and resonances of the room you're in. So you're suddenly at certain frequencies coming out at horrendous volumes, 120 dB if you're sitting in a standing wave. Well, that's just going to split your ears open. So most people aren't listening at that level. They're listening at 80 dB. And then occasionally there'll be some horrible resonance in the room that's hitting 100 dB. But for the most part, it's sub 100 dB. Well, you don't need 50 watts for that. You need 10. You know, you can achieve that easily. So most people are satisfied with most amplifiers and they won't hear a scrap of distortion. I remember explaining this to Anthony once and saying, if you want a really good sound, what you actually need to do is listen near field. That is to say, really close to the speakers. Because then if you can get the system into the middle of the room, it's signal to noise. Like when you're close to a microphone, you hear more voice than you do washing machine if your voice is close to the mic and the washing machine's far away. Signal to noise. Well, the same is true in reproduction. If you're close to the speakers, then what you're getting direct from the speakers, the direct sound, is increased over the reflected sound of the room. So if you want to really impress yourself, set your stereo up in the middle of the room, as far away, equidistant from all the walls and the ceiling and the floor, and then sit 18, 16, 10 inches away from the speakers in a little triangle. So I remember with Anthony Riley, he was like, what system do I buy? And I said, buy good speakers, and by good I mean a couple of £100, and then a cheap Chinese chip amp, and then set it up in the middle of your room so that you're really close to it. Like you see when you watch people monitoring to do recordings or production of any kind. They're normally sat in a little triangle with the speakers 1.5 foot away from each ear. The only reason they're doing that is so that they're near field, so that they're reducing the amount of reflected sound off all the walls. Then you hear the true sound, the direct sound. And because most modern equipment's pretty transparent, you can absolutely blow people away with almost any modern equipment after about 1990, because it all is pretty much transparent. The thing that changes, obviously, is the balance tonally of the speakers, which are all wildly varied, and that's just personal taste. You know, what do you like the sound of? What balance do you like? You like a bit more bass? Then go for this one. You like a bit more treble? Go for that one. But ultimately, what's coming down the pipe to the speaker is the same from almost every system. It's only when you push those systems that you see the differences, because they distort differently. And when it came to valve amps were often very low power. So in your guitar amp, your valve amplification's probably only 5 watts. It's probably very low powered. You know, and it might bullshit about the power and tell you it's 20 watts or something, but it won't be. It'll be 5 watts of clean power, and that's all you need.
Oh, it's a big 100-watt. Be nasty thing to carry about.
I mean, it must be massive then. If it's a valve amp that's 100 watts and it's true 100 watts, then it must be massive.
Yep. But whenever I take it about, I always get people trying to buy it off me.
Oh, okay. Cool. Yeah, valves are great. The reason they've stuck around in guitars, in guitar amps, is because they colour the sound. And colour's what you want when you're producing music, because the colour then becomes the sound, right? That is the sound. If it's just clean, like you get from a DI box, every musician ever is like sneering at a DI box. They're like, I don't want to use that. Because they want a tone. And they're all chasing a tone. Well, what's a tone? Well, distortion, basically. How is it colouring the sound? How is it introducing differences to the note that I've actually strummed? Well, that's the tone. When people are like, I'm looking for a tone, it's just some guitarists look in the wrong place. They're like, think that the wood the guitar's made of changes the tone. Like, no. But there's a good chance that the amp and what's being used to create the actual chain that the signal goes through will distort the sound. And if it does it in a pleasant way, then that's desirable. Hence, you end up with people wanting to mic the guitar cab rather than actually just take a straight signal straight from the guitar into whatever you're recording with a DI box, and then adding the flavour, the colour, the distortion, the saturation, whatever you want to call it, after the fact. Why bother? If you can just plug it straight into a guitar amp and go, yeah, that's my tone. It's like, well, that's the colour that produces. Therefore, mic that cab and you'll get that tone.
You're very clearly an audiophile, Nathan. So do you think that deserves an adenoidal tone to your voice?
Only geeky if you're an end user. I would use this information to extract money from people when I was a salesman. So, as much as I have a very nice hi-fi, it's all 20 years old, and I am not an audiophile. Audiophiles chase the next latest and greatest thing because they think they're going to improve upon their performance. Whereas me, I learn what it is, what produces good sound, what's making it bad, and what will give you the best bang for the buck. Now, in terms of, let's give you an example, right? When I was flogging really high-end amplifiers, in order to convince people to buy them off me, I needed to own them. So I bought some. I bought them for peanuts, right? Because I was obviously working in the factory that was making them. So I just got a couple of the guys to bosh me out a couple of amplifiers. They went on my racks. And then when people would say this, well, what do you use? I'd be like, these, obviously, because they're the best. Now, are they the best? No. When I replaced them with stuff that was 1/100th of the price. They were a fraction of the price. Did they sound any different? No, they sounded exactly the same because they were both transparent. They both produced the frequency response from right in the inaudible bass frequencies through to the highest of highs that you could never ever hear, completely flat. So why would they sound any different? They didn't. They sounded the same. But an audiophile will look at some shiny new amplifier and go, oh, I've got to have that. I bet it sounds great. And they listen to the salesman saying, well, of course mine sounds better than the garbage you're using. That sounds rubbish. Now, does it? Well, unless you know and unless you've tested it, you probably wouldn't know.
Well, what made Jimi Hendrix great? He took a technical freaking error of distortion and pioneered it. That's all he really did, right?
Yeah. I learned, like with Flat Earth, right, I sneer or look down my nose at audiophiles. Now, I can say this confidently now because I don't sell the stuff, so I don't care, right? But I have the exact same attitude towards most of my customers as I currently do with my current customers. Who are my current customers? Dweebs who believe Earth is a sphere. They're my customers. When you say, oh, these people are watching, I nod and laugh. You're like, yeah, I know they are. They're my customers. They're watching my show. Therefore, my customers. They're keeping the channel going. They're adding that little extra number 1 on top of the view count each time they tune in to tell me how wrong I am about their destructive dichotomy that they've produced. Now, this is the same as somebody telling me that the wire they use in the back of their hi-fi makes their hi-fi better. I would go, oh, right, is that right, Mr. Customer? Oh, interesting. Whereas what I'm really thinking is, you fucking dweeb. I hate you. You are such a stupid wanker. You have no fucking idea what you're babbling about, do you? But please give me your money. That's what I used to feel about the dweebs I dealt with in audio. That's the end users. Studios have a very different attitude. They're much more pragmatic about what they buy and whether or not it benefits them. They'll test immediately. So I remember trying to flog, to my detriment, I flogged a whole bunch of amplifiers to a particular studio, and then I tried to flog them a CD player. And they were like, well, we use these CD players because they've got access to the word clock, and we need to sync everything. Has yours got access to the word clock? Oh, absolutely. Here's the little word clock input on the back of my CD player. And I'm like, okay, well, let's compare it. So they went and ripped a disc, some Take That song that they'd just mastered, Shine. He gave me a copy of it, and like the single, and he was like, okay, here's the master, and I've ripped 2 from the master, 2 CDRs, so they're both the same, right? So we can play them at the same time through both CD players. Now theirs was a DCS. It had 4 different boxes. It was a power supply, a transport, a DAC, a word clock, and a power supply for the word clock, or something like that. It was like a whole bunch of boxes, and it was probably worth 40 grand, and the one I had was worth 20 grand. Yeah. Now, back to back, you could not tell them apart. They were identical. There was absolutely no difference. But when I went into the studio with my salesman's hat on, obviously I want to flog them something. So why would we buy it? Well, my answer was because it's better. Was it better? No. Both were completely transparent. You couldn't tell the difference. So they didn't buy it, obviously. But most people will do something very different. In a shop, when I was dealing with a dealer and I happened to have a customer come in, that would be their customer, not mine. The customer would come in, they'd say, right, here's the £5,000 CD player. They'd play them 5 minutes of the CD. Then they'd disconnect that CD player, reconnect the different CD player, and then play them another 5 minutes with 2 minutes of gap in between. And there's a good chance by then they've shifted slightly in their seat. Audio memory is probably about 5 seconds. So they can't remember what the last one sounds in the most literal of ways. But there's a placebo effect. I think it's called the McGurk effect, where what you see directly influences what you hear. So if you had a more shiny CD player, if it looked nicer, it would sound better. There's like an audio placebo effect, right? So I worked off that principle most of the time when dealing with end users. Mine looks better. It looked glorious. Therefore, the chances are when someone heard it, they would perceive it to sound better. Did it? No. There's a chance that beyond about 500 quid with CD players at the time, you couldn't get any better. They just all sounded the same. They were all completely transparent. They didn't do anything to the sound. They just chucked it out the back of it into the amplifier. So therefore, what's the difference between this one and that one? Well, nothing. And it was the same right up to the very, very highest of end equipment. When you back-to-back compared it, where you had a physical switch and you could flick instantaneously between one and the other to compare them side by side, with them both synced, playing at exactly the same speed at exactly the same time, with the exact same music ripped from the exact same disc, you compared them back to back, and there was no difference. Didn't matter that mine was 20 grand and the multiple boxes that they had in the studio was 30 or 40 or 50 grand. It didn't make any difference. What came out the back at the end of the process was the same. Now, for them, they needed various different interrupt points that they could pull from. That is to say, they might want to take the information from the transport, the ones and zeros, the digital data, and start manipulating that. They might want to take the analog data out of the digital to analog converter. They might want the clock information. So having it all separate and accessible was beneficial to the studio, as opposed to an all-in-one box that happened to have a word clock input. That's different. It's essentially achieving the same thing, but just with more limitations that they didn't want in the studio. So for them, it wasn't about necessarily improving the performance. It was about having access to more of the constituent parts of what makes a CD, or makes the output, the data from the CD, more accurately speaking. They wanted access to all of it, and they wanted the ability to sync it with everything else that they're doing. Now, that obviously costs more money, but it didn't mean that the DCS equipment was better. It wasn't.
When you just mentioned like about the it was identical. There wasn't a difference between them. It was exactly the same. That sounds like the supposed globe Earth measurements that were offered, opposed to the actual flat Earth measurements that we know about. They're both the same.
Yeah.
Thank you, One Deck, because I was about to call it Sound Earth debate.
Yeah. Well, it is the same by comparison, right? What you're saying is, if your input is the same on both sides, then what you then do after the fact, processing-wise, is all that changes. But the input data is the same. If you're taking elevation angles as your input, they're just elevation angles. It's not going to matter that after you take a flat Earth prerequisite measurement, you alter it by way of your mathemagics. So what? The input is still the same on both sides.
Exactly.
I'll try that again. Welcome, one and all.
How are you? I got a phone call just as you were saying how was everybody. So I'm great. How are you, Nathan?
I'm all right. Not too bad. Finally finished the Gravity chapter. So I've been editing it for about a full week, and it has been easily the hardest chapter. But I'm reliably informed that we are over that hump, as in that is the most complicated of all the chapters to be edited. So it's all downhill from here, from what I understand. That said, that it needs a strong anecdote to end that chapter with, or start the next chapter with, however you want to see it. And I don't know if I've got any anecdotes that are directly connected to Gravity. So, I don't know. The two that were in potential use, one was about fake clouds in the sky / fake spacemen in space, who was the very first guy I did Flat Earth UK with as a guest. So that was one anecdote. Another was one about Tim Osman and him trolling about 9/11 and muddying the waters, all that sort of stuff. That was the other choice. And then there's one, I think, about Anthony Riley. But none of them really fit with Gravity. So at the end, I was like, well, as it's currently ordered, we've got the fake spaceman in space story straight after the gravity chapter. It's very short as an anecdote. It's the shortest of all of them. Maybe just leave it as it is. So that is how it's currently ordered. Once we get to the, let's call it the 7th draft, it might be the case that we reorder some of the chapters, including the main chapters about the housekeeping questions themselves, which are the majority of, the substance of the book. But it might be that they get reordered as well. So at the moment, how they're ordered is just how we've worked through them, but they don't have any particular rhyme or reason about their ordering. That's to say, they're not specific in terms of where they need to come or why they're there. It's just that's how they've been, typed up. So whether or not we change the order, I don't know yet. But for now, we're working our way through, and we're about 2/3 of the way through. Editing, that is.
What was the original order then, Nathan? Would you not keep it to that? How did it actually come through in reality?
I don't know. I mean, I could do it based on the order that I used to ask the housekeeping questions, which would mean it would start with any evidence of a physical geometric sphere edge horizon, formerly known as the curve of the Earth. Then normally I'd move on to asking about axial rotation. Any evidence thereof, of the Earth-based variety, of course. Then move on to scientific evidence of gravity, self-perpetuating molten iron core, R value.
You are going to end it with the most updated one, like me and Neil suggested, aren't you? That'll be a great ending for the book, like we've said already. Latest question.
I don't know, maybe. It might be something that I slip in towards the end, which is to say, right at the point of redundancy for housekeeping, we introduced a new one, which was any evidence that Earth is measured anything other than flat.
Yeah, and that's the best one you could ask. And the only one that makes sense, if you think about it.
The problem is that once you realise that Earth is measured flat, there's a certain redundancy to the housekeeping question. So what's the point of housekeeping? Well, it's to point out that in an ongoing debate, there's a rinse and repeat methodology that's put in place by the perceived opponents, that's the globe believers, whereby you would take apart, I don't know, bent pseudo-geometry of Einsteinian gravity, and then the following day it would get reasserted and rinsed and repeated by probably the same person in some instances. A justifiable reason to ban some of the individuals that used to debate with us when you'd catch them in these lies, because at that point, when you're knowingly deceiving someone else, you are lying. Now, those are the kind of people that I didn't really want to deal with, so for a small number of them, they got banned for that reason. Like, no, don't be a liar. You can be wrong. You can be called a liar by many an incorrect panel member who would have crossed their paths when they were wrong. But that doesn't make them liars. Even the most disgraceful human beings that cross our paths, that fight for their belief in a ball that has utilised flat earth measurements, there's a good chance that you wouldn't get away with calling them a liar here unless you could actually show demonstrable evidence that they have been acutely made aware or made acutely aware of their incorrect assertion, only to reassert it the following day in the face of them understanding and repeating, in some instances, back to me personally, their inconsistency, their incorrect assertion, with the correction, with them acknowledging that they understand how wrong they were, only to go and reassert it because that's the current rhetoric for heliocentrists to believe in. Therefore, it's perfectly justifiable to lie. Now, that, as an ongoing debate, needed address in the form of something called housekeeping, which is to say, if you've gone through every aspect of a particular debating point and argument, it's not anymore, which is why I put it in air quotes, then keeping the notions that you've debated alive through a carefully phrased, most often malformed question to highlight the absurdity of the debate that had passed so that you could quickly summarise the position or get the opponent on the bull-believing side of this so-called debate to assert their flawed position quickly. So you didn't beat around the bush. If you're asking somebody for axial rotation evidence, then you know exactly what's being requested. But having, I don't know, a physical geometric sphere edge for a horizon be asserted to be seen that is suggested by a flat earther to be too far based on mathematics that require a flat plane to assert, you, at the last statement, require a flat plane to make these measurements to calculate into existence physical geometric sphere edge geometry. You then I now recognise the futility of making these positions debatable. You can't if you understand that both positions require flat Earth in the first instance. Then there isn't two positions, there's only one position, and the position's based on measurements. Well, other than people trying to recategorise measurements into philosophy, history sometimes about what people said, or moreover science and the scientific method, basically putting what is an absolute statement in terms of what has been measured with respect to Earth and its surface into a category it doesn't belong in, aka a category error. We're not dealing with science and the scientific method when we talk about how we acquire an elevation angle from surface level. Elevation itself is just a declaration of a measurement of the height. If you're going to categorise it based on the way the elites have produced systems for us to use in practical ways, then that description will come from sea level. It's a perpendicular, vertical description with a number in feet or metres, or any extrapolation thereafter, to describe altitude, elevation, height. These are flat Earth prerequisites. When you understand that and how that works axiomatically, you can't suddenly suggest that there's a necessary housekeeping question to ever exist. I don't need to ask you these questions. I don't need to put you, my opponent, because you're not, into a rock and a hard place scenario anymore. Again, yesterday's news is tomorrow's chip wrapping, and housekeeping questions that then turned into perceived dichotomies like rock and hard place. Rock being you will sink to your knees and acknowledge how flat Earth is measured. You don't need to do anything. You don't need to be on your knees acknowledging how flat Earth is measured. Earth's measured flat regardless of if you're on your knees acknowledging it or not. Furthermore, the person that I'm demanding gets on their knees to acknowledge how flat Earth must be measured. They're not measuring Earth, they're not doing anything. They're inconsequential. They're normally an adenoidal dweeb that has taken upon themselves to delude themselves into believing that their understanding of this subject is somehow consequential to how up works. No, definitely not. So the whole thing becomes pointless. So when it comes to the any evidence that Earth is measured anything other than flat, it's a completely undermining question when it comes to housekeeping question. It undermines the entire premise of having housekeeping, because the answer to that question is no, we only measure Earth flat, making every single housekeeping question utterly redundant. And it is not incumbent on me to force normal average Joes who have just found themselves in cognitive dissonance because they were trained to believe they were on a ball in their high school to suddenly face the reality that Earth's flat. It's flat regardless of if they understand it, and them having a religion of being on a ball is inconsequential to me. Now, you might argue that it is my due diligence to make this person aware so they can be cognizant of the deception that they might face out in the real world. But to be selfish, I don't care. If these people are kept under control by some elite hidden hand, who cares? It's not.
You shouldn't care.
Why? It's because it's completely inconsequential to me. So I don't care. Believe you're on a bloody ball. I don't give a crap. I mean, now that I understand how flat Earth is measured, it just means that I understand where this debate was created just to keep us occupied, just to keep us busy, just to keep us fumbling around as inconsequential dweebs and cool kids arguing about something that they're not actually doing. If you were doing it, you wouldn't be on a Discord server arguing with me, a YouTuber, would you? No, you'd be out there measuring the surface level, acquiring your altitude from sea level, mapping and charting the altitudes deviating from the sea level in the case of topography. That's to produce maps. Now, if you're doing those things, the chances are you, number one, as we have seen from the map-making guy, probably recognise what you're doing as tedious. And he's even said it. The map-making videographer that we covered has an interesting job because he's a YouTuber, but in terms of his actual day-to-day grind, dealing with Earth as a flat plane is reasonably monotonous. It's not exciting. It's only exciting when we talk about it because of the persecution that we faced when we were, past tense, conspiratorial flat earthers. Talking about 9/11 and COVID. Then you can be persecuted as a conspiratorial idiot rather than somebody who's actually doing the tedious monotony of measuring Earth flat, producing maps, detailing to others how to use those maps, flying over the ground that's flat, parallel for flight level. The people who come along and say flight level's not level, it's actually bending, it's working with respect to this gravity that I understand. You're just a sleeve wiping, bogey-faced, adenoidal tosspot who's decided to elevate yourself above the rest of the populace by suggesting that you understand this stuff better than the average man who's lost interest in it. While I'm going through my own book, I'm having to recognise how boring some of these subject matters really are. Now, if you're involved in it, that is to say you believe that you're doing the world the service they require. This world needs to know about orbits, and I, Batman, will tell you about them. You're just deluding yourself into thinking that you're some superhero educating the world about something very boring that most people have lost interest in. And maybe that's by design. That is to say, it was intentionally created in just as complicated a manner as it needed to be, with its outside-of-the-box violations of its base measurements, so that you would go one of two ways. Be the adenoidal dweeb that self-aggrandizes by telling yourself that you understanding how bent pseudo-Riemannian space-time geometry functions is consequential to a world that hates you for A, telling them about it, and B, was bored when they looked at it. But ultimately inconsequential to how Earth, in the most simplistic way, does actually get measured by the people who also view their flat Earth measurement processes as tedious and monotonous, separate from the science that it's not, separate from the linguistics of English definition that it's not, and separate from tosspot dweebs with adenoidal voices who have convinced themselves that understanding this boring shit is somehow consequential to everybody else. It's not. You're not Batman. Nobody cares if you understand orbits.
Nathan, you know that these dweebs are on both sides, right?
Absolutely.
You got them on the supposed side?
I can see it in my statistics, Neil. So what I have is a view count and a subscriber count. And I can watch the reaction of my own audience in terms of who deserts me at what point. And I know the general crux of what I'm laying down. And I know that there's going to be victims on both sides when I lay down the facts. Earth's measured flat. I did not measure it. In those two statements, I exclude a huge number of people who are so cognitively affected, that's to say in pain, as a direct consequence of me pointing out that Earth is measured flat, that they either want to run away from what I do or have me locked up. Make it stop is their attitude. Head in the sand or put the person saying it in jail. They're kind of the attitudes they take. On the other hand, there is a fart-sniffing dweeb that up until that point on my own side that had elevated themselves to intellectual superiority against the side that were telling them it was a ball. So when I say somebody they may have looked up to as a subscriber, say, I don't matter. I didn't come up with these flat earth systems that we are using. I'm not employing them, I didn't create them, and I'm not extrapolating anything out from them after the fact. That's to say, I'm not producing a new calendar, I'm not explaining epicycles or retrograde motion, I'm not trying to come up with an orbital path for our planet, I'm not trying to extrapolate out from any of the flat earth measurements of elevation angles to the stars and sun and moon. I am just an observer from the outside who was dragged into this discussion so that I could do the same thing, aggrandise myself like I had some importance. And I fully bought into it, don't get me wrong, I tracked the sun on a flat earth thinking I was changing the frickin' world. I was basically Superman while I was doing that. I was so important. Now I realise how futile and insignificant and unimportant it was. But as a consequence, I can point out the same from my opposing side, that guy who's elevated himself perceives there to be. An opposing side? No, it's just measured flat. But just not by you. And you finding out how flat it is only serves one purpose in your fart-sniffing mind if you're on the flat earth side of the discussion. To tell people how important you are to broaden their mind, to realise the grand deceptions that are out there. It's like, who the hell do you think you are? What gives you the right to express this? Now, there's obviously people who've gone very much out of their way to introduce these control structures, and some of them get praised. They're called societal constructs. Now, you can see them for what they really are, just means of keeping people under control, but a lot of people do consider their society to be civilised. And some of the rules and regulations and control structures are there to keep people civilised. Because there's nobody around from heliocentric days of yore to point your finger out and blame for the deceit. Most of the people who created this nonsense were trying to come up with outside-of-the-box thinking to explain patterns in the sky that had been based on flat Earth measurements to begin with. We, after the fact, happen to have our civilised society utilising these heliocentric constructs in the form of a religious view that almost everybody on the surface of God's green earth has now adhered to. It is the one world religion. And so what? Do you want a completely uncivilised society? Do you feel that by telling that one next man how wrong they are about the education they received with the outside-of-the-box thinking that give us explanations for orbital motions derived from flat plane angles, do you think that person's going to suddenly go out and change the world as a consequence of you telling them? Will they suddenly realise that 9/11 was an inside job because they're going to widen their eyes to all the deceptions that's out there? Is that what you think? And when I say you too are delusional, you don't make any difference beyond you sniffing your own farts with one man in front of you being lorded over by you. And what do you two achieve at the end of this break? Nothing. You did waste quite a lot of your time. So by default, having this discussion where you, the flat earther, aggrandise yourself and the ball believer defends his already in place cognition, all you really achieve is wasting your very, very finite time that you have on the surface of the flat plane that some of us appreciate gets measured by others who see the measurements as tedious and do not get persecuted for measuring it in the way it's required to be measured, flat. But you can waste your time. Me, I love sitting here, because what am I doing now? I'm looking down the barrel of a camera and producing YouTube content. But as I started this point out with, I can watch people leave my subscription base because they wanted a Nathan Oakley that told them that they were important. That by learning how to be a flat earth debate ninja, you can be powerful like a ninja, metaphorically beating people up. Now, you going out and being that flat earth ninja will achieve nothing. So there's obviously going to be people out there that don't like that and don't go, what, you mean we can just relax about the whole thing and it's actually very chill? Yeah, the second you stop worrying that the next man sees you as important. When you stop worrying about how next man perceives you, you won't care if next man knows that he was wrong in an education they had in school. If he was taught about ghosts being real, you would be less concerned if everything else was equal. All the ghost hunter videos were as they were, but we happen to have been taught in school that they're real. Well, you're not of the inclination to take that particular route as important. Other people do. But we, flat earthers and anti-flat earthers, that's globers and flat earthers, now called anti-globers, we can waste a lot of our own time and we haven't got much of it. You know, you're only here for a very short period of time. Do you want to waste it arguing with some next man who's not measuring anything, not flying anything, not sailing anything, not producing any maps, doing any cartography? Do you want to waste your time telling him he was wrong? Why? But like I say, that will directly affect my sub count from the flat earth side as well. I understand that. But those people can have their argument. They are wasting their own time. And me, now I recognise it, I don't want to waste another second of it. It's not to say I look back on the time that I spent debating Flat Earth and go, oh, what a waste of time. I've wasted 10 years of my life. On the contrary, because I had the same opinion sat here now as I did then. I love making YouTube videos. I defined it as having two different hats. And when I put the Flat Earth hat on, I was learning about that information whilst producing content. I never had to concern myself with it once the job I do and love ended. Who cares? It doesn't matter. I'll do it again tomorrow, and I will continue in this regard, because this that I'm disseminating to you, the audience now, is the rhetoric moving forward if you stay subscribed to Nathan Oakley. It means you can become more zen as a result of it. Less concerned about the propaganda that kept you in fear, or next man's subservience to that propaganda. You don't have to worry about it. Now, there is going to be every rule with an exception. Most of the time, it's going to be a family-based one. Well, my son, daughter, cousin, mother, father believe in a globe, and I know better than they. Well, on a case-by-case basis, you have to assess whether or not it's actually beneficial to your relationship, therefore your time on God's flat earth, to pass this information on to that particular individual. Sometimes that will be to your time and emotional and family tie detriment. So why would you want to do that? Therefore, careful assessment is what you should do. You should take your time and ponder whether or not it's worthy of discussion. And sometimes the juice is very much not worth the squeeze. Who's off mute? What?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't even realize.
Sometimes the juice is just not worth the squeeze. So for people who came for 4 weeks in a row to see me thrashing it out, purely because I wanted to increase the numbers, the only reason I was squeezing that juice in the first place is because I've seen that of late, people have gone, I don't like Nathan's attitude. I did like sniffing my own farts. I loved lording it over the people who thought they were on a sphere, and I can even justify it as being needed. Like due diligence, I think I had many times. Like, you are important in this, like it's your job to go out and correct people. Why? Justify this to me, if I care, which I don't. So actually, bugger off, you're no longer wanted. So why would I want to increase those numbers with the very people who are deserting me because they don't want the idea that they are on a pedestal taken away from them? It's like, let them. Slide off the pedestal yourself. But far be it from me to say that you're wrong arguing with bull believers. On you go, do what you want. If you want to argue with globe believers, feel free. I'm not going to stop you. If that's how you want to spend your limited time here, and you enjoy doing that, then so be it. I enjoy making YouTube videos, which is why I'm sat here now. Now I'm done.
Okay, so then I understand exactly what you said. So then what's the point of somebody coming in here and saying, let the bullshit begin? Just go on your way, go back to 24/7 and argue about refraction.
Yeah, I mean, there's an entertainment aspect of it from my audience's point of view. I'm sure if some bull-believing tosspot came in now and started spurting his rhetoric at us about how bull-shaped the world is, the flat earthers would still cheer when they hear their position turned into a flat earth evidence almost immediately. I'm sure that that would get the same reaction it's always gotten. But as far as I'm concerned, on a general day-to-day basis, I want to be zen. I want to sit here with my cup of coffee, relaxed, having a conversation with the people around me. And everybody who's around the bar has a like mind. That is to say, we have come to the conclusion that it's not worth the squeeze. We all know it's flat. That's how it's measured. The only reason you can come to this zen position is by understanding that there is only one position to hold, and it's based on how Earth gets measured. So if Earth's getting measured flat, there's nothing else to discuss. You who have come into the bar to cause trouble standing on the tables want to shout at us about how ball-shaped it is whilst using flat earth measurements. So to us, you just look silly while you're standing on the table screaming about how the flat earth measurements that you will be using create a ball. To me, that's just ignorance and stupidity. Now, I got a message, shout out to you, Michael, you know who you are, in regards to Asmongold. Now, Asmongold's covered a state that has relinquished the ability for the trans community to state their claimed gender on a driving license. That's to say, if you were born male and have transitioned to female, you would no longer get away with putting female on your driving license because you're a biological male. Now, I don't know which state it is that's now implicated this, but Asmongold's discussion on this matter was to say, in the same way as if you are 5'9" and you describe yourself as 6'1", then the police have a bit of an issue with you if you're putting that information incorrectly, lying, on your driving licence. Therefore, by the same standard, according to Asmongold, to parrot out his rhetoric on this particular video, you'll see what I'm getting to, or where I'm getting to in a minute, he was in agreement, right? Now, I don't have an opinion on the matter. I'm not trans, so I don't, as much as it might offend people, care. Now, you might go, well, you should. And, well, no. You do you. If you want to fight for your right to put your name down as female when you're born male, if you get that, then great. If you don't, I don't care. It doesn't really affect me because I'm not in that particular protected group. Now, my group's not protected. Therefore, you can utilise Flat Earth to standardise levels of stupidity, which is what Asmongold did. So towards the two-third to end point of his video, I think it's at 19 minutes, I did have a quick look, I'm not going to play it, but towards the end of his video, he's describing that protected group, but via flat earthers and their level of stupidity according to him. Now, probably because Asmongold's smart enough to realise that if he pours scorn on that group, there's a good chance he'll get in trouble quickly, because they're I've already pointed it out, protected group. We're not. So he can just draw comparisons with flat earthers, because then he can indirectly call a group that's protected stupid by pointing out that, like, flat earthers are stupid. Okay, well, we are separate from what he stereotypes as a flat earther. When I'm making songs quite literally about being a conspiratard, talking about conspiracies like 9/11 and COVID, and then being called quite specifically a flat earther. How many times have my panel regaled the audience with stories of talking about something that's ancillary to flat earth? That's to say, nothing to do with earth measurements or even anti-ball rhetoric. And then somebody asks them immediately after, are you a flat earther? It's because the two are synonymous. Now, back to the decreasing sub count, there's a lot of people out there that want that to be the case. Now, throughout my history of debate, I've come across plenty of people who I'd formerly, in some cases, interviewed about their connection to a given conspiracy. They get bundled in to being a flat earther without necessarily having any geographical expertise whatsoever. They've normally got expertise in whether or not Paul McCartney died, or something equally nonsensical. And that's their expertise. So you end up with shows produced by myself and Patricia Steer, or ripped off in the concept, where the flat earther is quite specifically going through a non-flat earth related conspiracy subject. Because then you can call the scorned group that Asmongold's stereotyping to get away with knocking a protected group the flat earth idiots. You're like, yeah, those are the very people who are deserting us currently. We're separating the wheat from the chaff on both sides when we point out Earth's measured flat. Now, Neil's quick to point out that, well, people don't like it. They want to continue debating. You're like, well, I can't give it them both ways. I can't give them an end to the discussion in terms of the absolute nature of a measurement of an Earth that has surface level or sea level describable, and then say, yeah, but you can still continue arguing. So this is a necessary process. Now, I can talk about it because I've watched my sub count start to go back up. I'll never talk about it when it's actually doing that. Now that I've turned it around, I'll take credit. I don't know if it's me that's done something or there's been a change, but the count started to go back up again and has reached the level that it previously was at. So now there's nothing but up, the only way is up from here, as opposed to me talking about this particular aspect of YouTubing when there's a downward incline of views or subscribers in this particular instance. But now that that's been rectified, I'll talk about it because I know that it's necessary, or was past tense necessary, to separate some of the wheat from the chaff. It means that there's less troublemakers from our own side. So the people who come in and always get described by metaphor as coming into the bar and stamping on the tables, taking their flat earth measurements to declare that they're on a ball, well, those particular individuals have a mirror, have a contrasting opposite in the anti-globe side that do the exact same thing. They're the people that are walking away from flat earth debate currently and moaning as they do, normally kicking over a few tables as they leave, right? I'm sure you know who I'm talking about. Because they do, they'll make their protestations verbal. You'll hear it, in other words.
Okay, like Mike 808, what's this about? Right? I see him here all the time. You're labeling and assuming behaviors while sprinkling in measured flat, then claiming it to be empirical. We've never used the word empirical. I'm sorry. We even fought against that word empirical for measurements.
Yeah, it's a bit of a, again, so what we're now doing is taking this measurement, we haven't specified what, into the semantics of how it gets defined in the English language. Like, does it matter if we use the word empirical? When you measure something, let's say, to give it substance, an elevation angle from sea level, you're trying to find your fix. You're trying to find out where the hell you are. You've got lost. Your boat's sunk. You're on your boat. You're on your lifeboat, dinghy, whatever. And you're trying to figure out where the hell you are so you don't die. Well, at that point, you, if you're holding a sextant, don't concern yourself with the semantics of whether or not what you are about to measure is described in the English language as being empirical or not. It doesn't matter. So again, we, being this very Zen individual that I'm aspiring to be, I'm not quite there yet, immediately want to point out to this person that it matters not how we define it. We're not in an English lesson. This is not about the Socratic method. You don't have to agree with me when if I incorrectly described a measurement as empirical. Doesn't matter. What the measurement is stands on its own. It doesn't need me as a defense team. It doesn't need me to explain it to you. And even if I do achieve that ends, you and I are not doing anything with these measurements. I can come up with a hypothetical scenario where we're on a dinghy because our boat's sunk, but we are not on the Titanic. We are not on one of the life rafts. We aren't in any danger. Hope you understand.
Well, are you denying the measurements? Because if you are, then you're denying reality.
Denying anything. I'm saying the measurements that can be and are required of Earth's surface are flat. It's included in the language that's used when you describe the measurement you will take, future tense. Like when you measure surface level, when you measure from sea level. Every single one of these descriptions includes what will be taken for the measurement. So if I say altitude, there's specifics in terms of what that means. Your perpendicular vertical axes. So you then have immediately tied it to something that's axiomatically and principally linked to a vertical axis. If I'm going to put a little number and say how high something is in feet or meters, what I absolutely can and will use to describe it to next man is the sea level you're describing that altitude from. Now, these principles, number one, are not mine. Number two, not currently being used by me. And number three, not consequential if you think that they are actually a proof of a curved sea level because you think you're on a ball. Okay, have it. What's that? It's perpendicular to a curve. Okay, have that contradiction in terms. You can have it. It's on me. Yeah, what's that? Yeah, 90 degrees to a ball. Yeah, that's right. Okay, that makes you sleep better. I'm not measuring this. I have no requirement to measure this. And the fact that I understand the axiomatic principle in this regard, perpendicularity, doesn't mean that I'm going to change the world with that knowledge. It just puts me at peace for the last 10 years of debate that's been unnecessary. Because there is only a flat earth to be described when you use that word, perpendicular. That's it. That's the end of the discussion. It didn't need the discussion, though. It was utterly pointless to be even having it. What we measure for altitude is what it is. It doesn't need a defence team. It doesn't need a debate. It doesn't need the semantics or the Socratic method applied. It's not a historical standard. It doesn't matter who you quote. It doesn't matter what you reference. But people around us, they're just not getting this. But it's relatively new. This kind of throwaway attitude of the entire subject seems paradoxical to the people who are listening to it. Well, your show's called Flat Earth Debate. Yeah, it is. Yeah, that's right. And it will continue to be as well. As long as there's out there people who perceive there to be a discussion or debate to have. I mean, they'll find out from us very quickly the axiomatic principle of measuring height in the vertical with respect to sea level. What's that? You now feel compelled to tell me how bendy sea level is? Yeah, you can. But you're forgetting that the monks around here are trained ninjas. And we will slice your fucking head off. But you feel compelled, right? And now that's entertaining. People love watching that. Yeah? But there's also fart sniffers that wanted to train as ninjas. And we're now sat around going, no, we're monks. We don't want to train you. So you can bugger off. You know, you're just disturbing the ambience here. That's all you're doing. Why? Because you're stinking the place up with your own freaking farts.
Yeah, I don't think people are comprehending it. They're getting very upset. You know, you get Jomo level logic saying, I'll be leaving my membership and no worries, no need to ridicule folks. Laugh out loud, Nathan, but whatever. And then he attacks me and said, it's mad you say. You do you? Means, because I told him, listen, you do you. So he said, you do you means nothing. Keep your trap shut and keep hanging on Nathan's coattails. You add nothing to the show but being a whipping boy, meaning me. I was taking his back and telling him, listen, basically, don't worry about what Nathan's saying. You do you. And this is what we get. People want to fight about the nature of reality. I don't know what happened in 2014 or 2015, but some of us are able to come out of it once we realize that Earth is measured flat. What the hell is there to fight about? And some people still want to be in the freaking arena fighting. And you missed the super chat, which is a pretty good one. You want me to read it?
I've got it. Nathan is the flatinator. I think he means like gladiator and flat combined. Flatiator. Cheers, Nathan and panel. Thank you very much. Is it Misfit? Misfit 850. Thank you very much indeed for the super chat. See if I can bring it back up on screen so people can read it. If I can scroll back far enough. There we go. Thank you very much indeed for the super chat. Really appreciate the support. Now, I
don't know what way to go, Nathan.
With enough time, people will pick up what I'm putting down, Neil, which is to say, how can I get it now? The Matrix analogy. When Neo is being trained by Morpheus and he's saying that I will be able to stop bullets, and he's saying, no, I'm telling you that when you are fully trained, you won't have to. That's what I'm trying to communicate to the audience now. I've called it apathy up until now. There's a certain relinquishment of the need to fight that you will experience once you pick up what I'm putting down at the moment. That is to say, we have, for want of a better word, evolved beyond the necessity to fight about this subject. When you appreciate where this subject ends, the road ends with all paths reaching a point that measurements are the only arbiter of the discussion. For everyone. Doesn't matter if you believe you're on a ball, Earth gets measured flat for that belief. To calculate into existence sphericity, you require derivations for elevation angle measurement of a flat Earth. Doesn't matter if you're using that to put the lights in the sky into an orbital motion or derive an R value to extrapolate distance to things like the sun in a heliocentric world. They're all derived from flat Earth prerequisites and measurements in the first instance. So if you're measuring Earth flat to achieve the systems that have had great minds think outside of the box to explain inconsistencies with certain light movements, specifically retrograde motion, formerly epicycles, then good for them. Now, us being manipulated and fear-based mind control being placed upon us via a system that uses heliocentric stories is no different to being told that if you don't behave, Zeus will strike you down from the heavens with thunder and lightning. There's no difference. It's the gods of the sky being an ever-expanding vacuum and terrifying, hurtling rocks that are coming to kill us versus men sat on clouds with thunderbolts and lightning. There's no difference. Both are used to control the populace. Both are expanded, story-based, rhetoric-based control structures. But one seems laughable to us in the modern times. What, us modern smart people sniffing our own farts because we understand that we're on a ball moving around the sun? We're not. That's a mathematization derived from flat Earth measurements that are very specifically violated to produce the contradiction of a ball Earth moving around the sun. By that I mean the surface level that is measured to produce the angles and derived radial values that the spheres you believe you're standing on have utilized, past tense, are violated if you bend the surface level you measured flat to acquire them. You can't say you've acquired an elevation angle from surface level for a straight, flat, linear distance that you can ascribe to a radius value, which is also straight, and then say that that very line you measured and acquired and gave a distance that was horizontal and linear with a mile number is actually bending, because it messes up the entire system that's calculated after the fact. But the calculations do not comport with the original measurements. This outside-of-the-box thinking applied to heliocentrism directly violates its own base measurements. Therefore, as a system, based or claimed to be based in reality, it will fail. Doesn't need any input. In the same way, the flat Earth measurements do not need a defense council. They don't need a semantical discussion. They don't need any debate. They are what they are. But the same applies in the negative to heliocentric rhetoric. It will eventually fail because it's based on a foundation that is being violated by the calculations. If your foundation is flat and you attempt mathematically to curve your foundation, then you're breaking your foundation. If you're getting an R value from a flat horizontal distance acquisition through an angle measurement, then you need the angle to have a straight line. That's what an angle is. The minute you bend it, that's create a surface that's curved, then you violate your own base surface level principal measurement. Therefore, heliocentrism will fail. I will have no part in it. Nobody will turn around at the point that heliocentrism falls into the doldrums and gets forgotten about. No one will ascribe that failure to me for pointing this out. Now, I can verbalise it. I'm good with language. I can tell you, the audience, that this will fall regardless. But again, if you feel that you were consequential, you were fighting a good fight and getting everybody to understand how flat Earth was and we were deceived in school and how ball-shaped it isn't, ultimately, the system will fail without any input from you. Therefore, when you assess that entirety, you go, I have got limited time, why would I waste it on something that's destined to fail anyway? It will and can only fail. Heliocentrism will fall. It is inevitable. It doesn't need any pushing. They're breaking their own foundations. So when you look at that fact and understand that the foundations are flat, and that was what you, my, in some cases, former audience were striving for, I can only suggest that there is no pleasing those former audience members. You wanted a silver bullet. Well, the silver bullet is that Earth's measured flat by everyone, but that means that there's no more argument for you to have, so you can't put yourself on a pedestal and aggrandise yourself above others. But doesn't matter. If your ends was that heliocentrism eventually fell, it will. I absolutely assure you. It can't not fail. It must and can only fail. It's self-destructive. It violates its own foundations. It very literally curves the flat foundations it's built on. The measurements that are required from a flat surface level, described from sea level, are bent by heliocentrism. Therefore, it will and can only fail.
Do you think it needed that initial push? Like, because I know that people have debated this for years. You could just go back in history and see people fighting against the globe. But you think it needed that initial push?
No.
Like when it started in 2014 with the internet?
No. As soon as you violate your own base principle measurements, from the day of heliocentric creation, it was destined to fail. It violated its own base principle measurements from its moment of inception. So did it need a push? No, the foundations have already been bent upon the creation of the system. The foundations were bent immediately the moment it was conceived.
Yeah, but you needed people to be aware, Nathan. People weren't aware. You can't deny the fact that when this started popping off in 2014, people became aware, and because of the internet, it grew largely all over the earth. So you can't just say that it would have happened.
You're wrong. What you're describing when you say it grew is the people's understanding of it. And I've just made absolutely clear that the people's understanding of it is inconsequential of the measurements themselves. The flat measurements didn't need mass understanding. They didn't need consensus. So when you say, well, people needed to know, no, they didn't.
Nathan, there's no way this is collapsing without flat Earth debate happening when it happened and this going on right now. There's no way it's going to fall on its own.
Yeah.
With
I get
the
it.
constant movies and propaganda they got coming out day in and day out.
Yeah, that's different. So there's a proactive effort to keep a dying structure alive. When I metaphorically describe them patching up the cracks, that's what's required. But the cracks are going to appear regardless. They're already engineered in when they violate and break and bend the flat foundation it's all based on. So the cracks will appear. You don't need to point them out. You're helping them, Neil. The people, from a perspective of individuals knowing, I've already described that they're inconsequential to how flat the Earth gets measured. How and why of people's understanding is utterly inconsequential. But what we're actually doing is helping the system. Because you go, look at that big crack. And they go, oh, crap, let's smear that over with a heliocentric bullshit of space-time bending.
No.
Or sea level bending.
I'm talking about first entering this whole topic. When we first entered it, Nathan, I think that was a tipping point of it.
I disagree. I fundamentally disagree. No, you aren't consequential to this. I'm not consequential to this. Having the ability to produce content to entertain people on YouTube is the only result. So you can look at it from a social perspective, but it is folly. You can suggest, let's take it away from us and put it into our opponent's camp. This will hopefully help you conceive what I'm talking about. You can perceive that flat Earth is dangerous if you're a bull believer, and that the truth of heliocentrism needs to be maintained. So therefore, you go out and you measure Earth flat 1,000 times with elevation angles to the sun, and tell yourself that you've done a really good job protecting that which needs to be protected.
I'm talking about now. I'm not talking about now. I agree with you now. Now we're all irrelevant. But come on, you can't knock the beginning stages of this discussion. When it started, I don't know, because you got Jado telling me that there was back chats before freaking the internet.
It was. It would have been done with literal message boards and leaflet campaigns and books. You know, we didn't have the internet when you have what's he called?
Yeah, there would have been a
Parallax.
slow bleed.
No, this is people highlighting to the system where the system fails. Now, you perceive that to be the start of something consequential, but the only reason throughout history there's been objectors to the heliocentric model is because the cracks become glaring to each and every single generation. But that just means that socially, there's always going to be a fart-sniffing dweeb who wants to defend their own cognition, who's there ready and willing to give up their own time that's limited to patch the failing system. Because somebody else has pointed out, oh, check it out, the Emperor's got no clothes on. Oh, well, no, there's invisible silk that's being used, will be the cry of the heliocentrist, Neil, who's off mute while I'm saying all this.
Rowbottom's time, right? Rowbottom comes along and he does some freaking Bedford level, whatever you want to call it, right? Because he's aware. He knows Earth is measured flat. He may not be voicing it. He may not be using the proper phraseology, but he does understand that Earth is flat, correct?
No, what he did, no, I'm answering you. No, he whistled straight past every single flat Earth prerequisite, like his elevation, to describe the distance to the vanishing point, like the distance that was horizontal and measured. And I'm answering you.
Yeah, but so did we. We whistled past it too.
Yeah, therefore, the fact that the Earth was measured flat by all parties involved held true throughout the debate that was perceived 100 years ago also. There was just more numpties not recognising how flat Earth would be required to be measured for them to argue about how spherical it isn't, when they describe how the world's not falling away from their position with a flat Earth measured distance and a flat Earth measured altitude. That they all ignored. So were they helping? Was that the start of the failure of heliocentrism? No. In fact, quite the contrary. They were helping patch it up. I mean, obviously, you can slap on another layer of refraction on top of the surface level parallel with eye level used to derive Earth curve mathematics and give you a distance to a geometric sphere edge below the surface level everybody's measuring. And it's necessitated. It's there and required regardless of anybody's discussion about it. Now, when you point out that there's a surface level, you can't violate the axiom. You can't say, well, I'm going to make the surface level bend. You're like, well, then the mathematics fails. It's no longer parallel with eye level. But then you're entertaining it by pointing out yet another crack that's appeared as they've patched over the last one. What is actually required, in my humble opinion, in its early days, is utter and complete apathy. If you don't care about this nonsense, that is to say, you see a giant heliocentric crack and go, I don't care. Whereas if you go, look, it's a complete failure to describe orbital motion. They need a plane of reference. They need elevation angles for radial values. All you'll get is some dweeb going, actually, there's a curvilinear red radius that I can describe. I've just invented it. And semantically, I can find 5 references where somebody quoted it. Radii can bend. You're like, no, they can't. And so it goes on, right? There's just more layers of bullshit that when a third party comes in and goes, I understand radius. I've used a radius. I can measure circles. But actually, radius bends. And according to this, it's because of the 5th dimensional geometry of Bev-Tri thinking. Therefore, pi equals 2? I'm not quite understanding any of this shit. It's actually quite tedious. I'm going to leave it. Right? But in that process, there's a convolution of nonsensical garbage that all stood to be debated on foundations that were measured flat anyway. So was it worthwhile endeavours for all 3 of those parties just hypothetically discussed? No, just a complete waste of time for all parties involved.
Oh my God, Nathan, it's a system. Systems are put in place. For systems to fail, there must be an uprising of a counter system. That's okay, so flat Earth has always been there. Yeah, but That's not how I was raised. I was raised on a globe, right? I was taught it in school. So systems have to be overthrown.
No, they don't.
Sorry.
In the case of heliocentrism, it didn't affect how flat you measured the ground when you actually did things that were practical, did it? Your belief in heliocentrism still stood while you were putting floors down flat.
Yeah, but you don't realize it. Well,
But you're wrong.
actually, you do realize
it didn't need to fall. No, it didn't need to fall then. So, people weren't walking on a wonky surface because of your heliocentric belief, were they?
I get what you're saying. It's no matter how you slice it, it's still flat. It always has been, and it's just a belief to believe you're on a globe.
Yep.
So no matter what you're doing, you do it on flat Earth. They measure it flat. We sail upon it flat. We fly over it flat. I get it.
Yep.
That there on screen, isn't it? That was their go-to. I mean, the two main pieces of evidence for the globes, and still is, Eratosthenes, which he measured a distance between 2 points, linear distance, and then he measured an elevation angle using the surface of Earth. That's not a curvature measurement. Yeah. After that, he did some calculations in mathematics and presupposed that the Earth was a sphere in the first place. The other guy, Al-Biruni, also used elevation angles and depression angles. Yeah. So the evidence of the globe is flat Earth measurements. And when we picked that up, that was a turning point. And it's very telling now, because a lot of the globe believers, when you ask them to go through this in detail, let's look what happened and in the explanations in the books, they don't want to talk about it, because you can clearly see Earth was measured flat then, supposedly 2,000 years ago.
Listen to what this guy says in chat, because I was kind of vibing with him until the last thing. The lie is destined to fail from the start, and the cracks are there because it is a lie. But for people to draw attention to those cracks by shining the light of truth makes all the difference. I don't agree with that.
Yeah, I don't agree with that. Until the last sentence, I agreed with him for the first 2/3 of that statement. Yep. I'll put it up on screen as it is literally in the chat right now. Right. Is it that says, is it red? Yes. No. I mean, if something's cracked, if something has fault lines, if something's failing, you saying, check out that building, it's got big cracks in it. It's like, no, the entropic decay that will occur is always going to occur. But there's a good chance that by pointing at the cracks, some fart-sniffing dweeb comes along and says, I can slap a load of cement over that. I mean, it's not going to keep it up for very long, but it'll not fall down in the next 5 minutes if I slap a load of concrete in that crack. That's all that's happening.
I see. Yeah, I get that illustration, because no matter how you patch a building, if that foundation is cracked, it will crumble. I get it.
Well, the foundation, in the case of what we had on screen and what's on screen now, are angles that take place with respect to a flat surface. That's part and parcel of the angle. But in the case of both the Alexandrian Sayan example and Al-Biruni being up a mountain example, they bend the very surface that they took those flat Earth prerequisite elevation angle measurements from. Their presupposition takes place after they've measured the surface flat. So in the most literal sense, what is utilised for this on screen now, this angle with respect to a surface to perform trig, you can no longer do the minute you bend the surface. That is the overarching principle of heliocentrism. Take a flat Earth measurement, ascribe it a distance, keep that distance horizontal and linear by definition by putting a mile number next to it, and then bend it. Well, it's immediately going to crumble, fail, fall, disintegrate, become subject to entropy, however you want to describe it. You've bent the base principle measurement your system's foundationally reliant on.
Yeah, I agree now. The building analogy makes a lot of sense, because you don't need, that building needs no assistance in it crumbling. It will crumble.
Yeah, heliocentrism will fail. Now, maybe there's people in the upper echelons of financial society that can recognise how important it is to keep the average Joe normies with a limited time span on the surface of Earth fighting in a category error, language, science, whatever, sociology, what are the other couple that they use? Philosophy, whichever category flat earth measurements like this on screen now are not a part of, if people will fund that or make it necessary to do so based on people's outrage through algorithmic encouragement, then people will continue to patch the heliocentric system. But it's a system that requires input from parties who, in this instance, aggrandize themselves into the important position of patching up a building that's falling down anyway, that's fundamentally got a design flaw. Like, having flat earth measurements as part of your curved surface is a design flaw in heliocentrism that will inevitably lead to its failure. Now, I'm not suggesting that that doesn't mean that there's plenty of involvement with government-based entities like NASA that will prop up and repair and keep in the mind's eye of people who need to believe in this so they can be fear-bombed constantly. You know, that comes at great expense. And I'm not suggesting that isn't the case. But what I am suggesting is, regardless of the input of people like NASA at great expense, you will still have this system fail. It is preordained. It can't not fail. Its foundations have been violated by the very principle and description itself. You can't have a flat baseline curve. Yeah, that contradiction in terms is borne out when someone tells you sea level curves, horizontals bending, level isn't flat. These are the endpoint contradiction in terms that come from an opponent trying to square that circle, trying to stop the foundation that must be flat from being flat. Like, that's self-destruction. Go ahead.
I see what's going on here. All that is necessary for the triumph of evil is that good men do nothing. So that's the misconception. He has the people that turned Earth into a globe as evil. Now, do we know that they were evil people?
No, if you want to look at their timeline arc, if you're saying that you want to put, I don't know, one of the, but finding out when Easter is, that's a practical application in terms of wanting to know better how the star's motions can be predicted in patterns that are taken with measurements off a flat plane. Outside of the box thinking leads you to heliocentric orbital motion to try and resolve some of these problems. And the people who are commissioning these out-of-the-box thinkers are the church. Why? Well, because they want to know when to worship the Lord Jesus Christ, specifically. So would you say that they're evil for wanting to develop this system with outside-of-the-box thinking? No. Now, could you say that the people who utilise this system to intentionally make people scared are also evil? Yes, potentially, if they know that what they're saying is bullshit. But proving that they know what they're saying is bullshit is nigh on impossible. And you can't assume it for anyone. Therefore, again, you're onto a bit of a loser in terms of making this suggested evil come to fruition. You'd be chasing your own tail most of the times. Most of the time, you'll find that the person who's in cognitive dissonance or deluded or just defending their own automatically requiring defense belief, you know, those people aren't liars, aren't necessarily evil in any way, shape or form. But by doing nothing, that's the next problem. I don't suggest that we're not doing anything. What we are doing now, in my humble opinion, right, me pointing out the folly of debate in regards to an axiom that's used by both sides, isn't me doing nothing. I don't see this right now, when I make it absolutely abundantly clear that Earth is measured flat, doing nothing. If it was doing nothing, it wouldn't have any effect, and there wouldn't be any backlash from the people who find what I say more outrageous today than it's ever been perceived. Ever. In 10 years.
Are you talking about the people who would gather together in mass and demand that someone providing a dictionary definition change the definition in that they keep the definition, but they just add on a disclaimer pronouncing their belief that the definition is incorrect.
Yeah, the kind of dweeby person that would go to that extent obviously feels that what I'm doing is extremely detrimental. But there's going to be another person on the contrasting side that wanted the folly of debate to continue, with debate being the main reason for their being in existence in the first place. That's the person that's going to brace against me and not recognise that while it, on the surface level for a flat earther, to summarise this particular individual, may not be recognised as beneficial to them, actually seen as detrimental, to say, no, we don't need to debate, this is pointless. But if they were to stop and go, well, how is my opponent that I want to keep debating about this with reacting to this information? And they go, oh my God, they're saying they want you locked up, and they're going out of their way to contact Sustainable by Design to change definitions of words and add on disclaimers that violate the very principle of the measurement. So in other words, they're reacting more, and their desire for blood, in my regard, has increased. They might turn around the people who are walking away from the flat earth side, this is, and go, oh, I wonder why they're reacting like that. And you're like, yeah, because we become more dangerous than ever. Our apathy is absolutely driving the globe earth believers insane at the moment. They can't cope with it. Now, it's not often that I'd say that they can't cope with things. Like, seeking out cope is seeking out the debate. Well, they're not achieving that. They're not coping with this, our opponents. And what are we saying about it? Oh, don't care. Do what you like. In fact, have your ball faith. You can have it. And they're like, no, that's not enough.
Let me ask you a question. Do you think that pointing out the cracks in a structure will make it fall faster?
Do I think what, Neil? Sorry, the coffee machine made some noise.
If you're pointing out the cracks in a foundation, the guy says you will help it fall sooner by drawing attention to the cracks.
No. You're alerting the repair team that they need to get on the case.
Exactly. So, I see your point now.
If let's say, for instance, people were like,
look at that one.
If you looked at the earth curve maths and went, it uses surface level, oh, I don't care, this is stupid, and then you just got on with your day, then it would just remain stupid. For anybody who came, they just went, no, there's surface level, I don't need to concern myself with this, it's not really important to me. And knowing why they've decided to put an extra horizon in an orthographic view below the surface level that's clearly getting measured, it doesn't help me. If that was the case, people would have had apathy and walked away and nothing would have been done. Instead, standing and going, check it out, you are measuring a distance to a geometric horizon that doesn't match with the photographs I take. And someone goes, that's a pretty intense crack up the side of this building. I know, if we come up with something called refraction in the orthographic representation derived from the R value at 7/6 of the radius, we can alter that value, 7/6 in a standard form, to match whatever we see in the pictures. So therefore, the globe belief can carry on. Thanks for pointing out that crack. I've just slapped a load of refraction over it. And the refraction's not going to hold forever. Someone will come along and show her that's not right. And we'll end up with a smarty pants flat earther saying that you'd need infinite over our refraction. And you know what the person would reply? Oh, thanks for pointing that crack. I think we will have infinite over our refraction.
I see your point. We're shouting out to the repair team to come and fix the crack instead of just leaving it fall on its own, because it will.
Measurements are the foundational basis of this claim that they make about Earth being a globe. You take away the measurements and the debate cannot happen.
Right. But some people are saying that it's necessary, right, to point out the cracks in the building for it to fall faster or quicker. But I'm starting to see it the other way now, because every time, like Nathan's saying, you're pointing out a crack, here comes the repair team, and the repair team is freaking refraction, 7/6R, or whatever they come up with. We're just helping them repair the freaking globe, and it's gonna last longer.
Yeah, exactly. So at the moment, what's the problem with the system? Oh well, the problem is it needs flat Earth measurements. Excuse me, repair team. We need to have a little round robin. How can we make flat bent? Oh, just describe it as being bent. Oh, okay. So we'll say flat bends. Yeah, I'll do for now. Okay. Excuse me, dumb ass flat earther. Flat means bending. What are you, an idiot? And so it goes on.
Oh, if it's a bend, it's not an angle, so we can go ahead and take this block out of here.
You can have 90 degrees to a curve, John. Look, here, sustainable design say you can be at 90 degrees to a curve. Here's a diagram with a curve meeting a line, and I've got a little box, and I've drawn the word 90 on it. See? If I zoom right out, it is 90.
You can have 90 to a curve, but you can't have 90 from a curve.
Hold on. You got a guy that's got a point here. He says, if the truth was never introduced to me, I would still be a glober. No repair team came to stop me.
Oh no, this is where this particular individual might be one of those people who deserts me. So were you planning on making a new calendar? When's that going to come to fruition? Did you develop a new map? Have you come up with a new system of flying horizontal to surface level? Were you going to develop a new average for sea level? Were you doing any of those things? You weren't. What about now that you found out? Are you very, very important? Yeah? Or is it that you want to aggrandize yourself into a position of importance based on this information because it contradicts something you were taught in school? Now, in school, you were told that it was important that you knew this. You believed them. Therefore, the antithesis in your perception is also just as important. It's not. You'd have to like it. Don't shoot the messenger.
Yeah, he made himself important in that message. Doesn't matter if we know or not.
Exactly. But on that humbling note, I'm going to say a huge, massive, enormous thank you to both Discord and G Plus panels. If you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley premiering streams, then stay tuned as there will be an after show to follow.
Yeah, there's people in chat want to be him. They feel like I was in the beginning. I'm saying, yeah, but this had to happen in 2014 for the system to start crumbling. But it wasn't until a building illustration that it hit me. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter because the building will come down. If it's foundationally cracked and not built correctly, it will come down without the assistance of anybody. And bringing attention will just bring the repairmen.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the thing is, when you throw out measurements, you don't have anything. You know? How are you going to ever build an argument for a globe without measurements?
Maybe you should calm down a little bit. You're losing people, Nathan. These are people that I see in the chat all the time. Now they're like saying, you know what? I'm out of here. They want to fight that bad. I don't know.
Yeah, I told you. The worst thing for flat Earth is flat earthers.
No, it's a flat earther that thinks he's relevant and very important.
now that we got our apathy intact, we should be cool to go around and hang around like Witsit now and be like, yeah, man, you believe whatever you want. It's stupid, but you do whatever you want to do. Like, really, doesn't matter where you go. You got like a suit of armor. If they don't want the suit of armor, what can you do for them?
That's a good one. That's right. Flat Earth is a suit of armor. Cannot be penetrated. Let me rephrase that. Understanding measurement becomes a suit of armor.
Yeah, because measurement, you're making an idea into information. You're creating information with measurement. Like, that's like foundational to everything. Like, our knowledge is built, our epistemology is built on this. And people are acting like that it's not relevant. Like, dude, come on now. You don't want it to be relevant when it's relevant, but it's relevant.
That's correct. So understanding how Earth gets measured becomes a suit of armor. Tell me how you can penetrate that.
You can't. If you're a globe believer, you have to cut your own throat before you try to stab it.
Exactly. You're a globe believer. In order for you to penetrate that armor, you'll be taking your own head off.
It's like taking your enemies on the battlefield and taping them to your shoulders and legs and stuff. Walking around carrying. I don't know. It's a silly image. It bothers me that they argue for ignorance, though, right? Like, they'll take the measurements, they'll concede that the measurements are planar. No problem there. Planar measurements on a sphere, boy. Now, what they do is they then try to apply some kind of logical framework delusion to show that those measurements aren't flat anymore, right? Like, say topology is not flat, so Earth is not flat, or they'll give some ridiculous argument against measurement,
Right,
which
but
is insane.
So Nathan's approach and how we've been approaching this topic from now on has people saying to me, stand by and do nothing as the tide goes out on your world. So they consider it like just like have this carefree attitude about it. It's just freaking measured that way. I do not feel the need to debate with you any longer. Is the tide going out on my world? These people have this as their world. And that's why there was certain people that are like, you have to debate. What do you mean? I have this measured flat destructive dichotomy that must be discussed. It's all about my journey. What do you mean you don't want to debate this? You have to debate. You must debate. Come and have a conversation with me.
Right. His destructive dichotomy against measurement gives him the true globe, is what he said, right?
Yep.
So those globe measurements are going to be flat Earth measurements. You're just going to say this stupid, crackpot logic argument against measurement. Are you high? You know what I mean? Like, what are they taking? Really tell me what they're taking, because I would love some of that stuff.
I don't know.
Yeah.
They're fighting against measurement, telling me, your measurements are the ones that are in question here. What do you mean? What do you mean our measurements?
You haven't got any.
Exactly. So how are our measurements in question here?
Yeah, their current vibe is make the globe measurements that we've talked about being flat our measurements, so they can show how they're wrong. Like, okay, do what you like. Don't care.
Yeah, I mean, it's silly. Like I try to get across the Bev or Nev. Give me the argument against an inch. If you said that to somebody on a job site, they may slap you.
Yeah. Again, something I've been trying to communicate with them recently. I mean, for that reason, they want me locking up. Like, if you talked like this in society, you would be punished. Now, it might be a verbal lashing. It might be a physical one. Depends how the person you're dealing with takes your affront to reality. It just beggars belief. Like you say, give me an argument against an inch. Like, nobody with right mind would ever consider that a possibility, let alone start working it out and then trying to tie it to an individual and give them a name. The people we're dealing with are so dweeby, and they have so little introspection that they don't realise what they're doing is just silly. They don't realise it. They've got a lack of self-awareness, right? Now, these people are of a type. There's a reason they're all that type of person, because like us having the introspection to say, well, look, flat earthers all do tend to be conspiratorial. There's a couple of exceptions, but for the most part, the most vocal ones seem to have the same backstory. I've interviewed them, like hundreds of them, and they're always the same. They've always got the same backstory. But likewise, these freaking dweebs and their 12-year-old boyish self that they couldn't get away from, these unfuckable adenoidal twats are all of a type. And they are, aren't they? They're always the same type of person. The person that were...
You know what?
Go on.
I was just going to say, yeah, they're all the same type, because the conspiratorial minded and the globers, they're all arguing from or for ignorance. They're making claims about things they don't know as if they're statements of fact.
Right.
They all do the same thing. That's why they're all bunched in together in this topic that's not a topic, really.
Who gave us the circumference of the earth? Did a flat earther? Did Nathan give me the circumference? Where did the circumference come from? And why am I arguing about a circumference? Those ain't my measurements.
Yeah. The most important statement in that was, why am I arguing about circumference?
Yeah. We measure it's flat. Not me personally, but if you look at maps, cartographers has.
You're talking about the royal we, Neil. You're talking about humanity, and people utilize Earth as a plane of reference to establish distance and elevation, angles, things of that nature. But they want to deny that. They want to separate the conceptual from what we experience, but then they still want to call it a measurement when they put the two at odds. But you don't have a reference for that anymore. It's not a measurement. They don't get it.
That's the part that's driving me insane. You're going to present some sort of argument, and the first thing you're going to do is use a measurement. Like, are you not paying attention? You're going to draw me a map about degrees, and you're going to talk about a distance measurement.
Yeah, and then they'll argue for the ignorance of what a linear function is, right? And say, well, I can wrap a tape measure around a basketball. Therefore, we can't know that these lines are straight, even though they're linear. You know what I mean?
I'll take it back to the inch then.
It's not a measurement. Yeah, it's not a measurement if it isn't that straight line distance, right? It's got to be that first before you can curve and bend it and do all that other stuff. That's why everything's with respect to sea level.
Correct. And if they want to get technical, we can pull out as the crow flies, right? That's what our measurements are. A to B.
Yeah, when you're talking about making a map, that's distance, right? You do that as a crow flies. You could then make a map of the road and give that road a value based on the linear function that you have, like your car tire spinning measures the distance that you traveled because of the revolutions and the known radius value of your tire. It's still linear.
Exactly. You're going over topography, but it's still linear in measurement.
Yeah, like the.
Go ahead, I'll go after you.
I was going to say, yeah, the topography thing is they say, well, a mountain's not flat, but the mountain is not the earth. The earth is that line that you draw that's horizontal on the bottom of the paper that you match the height of the mountain to. That's the earth. You know?
Yeah, they even say that. They even say that when you look it up. Regardless of mountains, valleys, hills, if you were able to take the earth from left to right and pull it straight, it would all be flat. Doesn't matter.
You guys already know this and appreciate this, but I'm just entertaining me, and I'm going to ask you: Have you ever watched somebody do perspective drawing of, say, some railway tracks or some mountains or valleys or a street?
Yeah, my kid does an art class every week, so yes.
And what's the first thing they do?
Draw a line in the middle of the page to give them a point to work around.
Yeah, a horizontal line, and that creates the vanishing line.
Correct.
It's as simple as that, really.
Yeah, that's how you draw a face.
And then the point on that line, everything is scaled to and from it.
Hold on. I like my bookshelf. Right? I got a bookshelf and it's flat, and I put books on it.
That's good for you, Neil.
Yeah. Are the books the earth?
Are those hardcover books?
Yes, they are.
Are the books the shelf? I mean,
No. Are the books the earth? Like, meaning, are the books part of the shelf? No. Part of it, because I put them on there. But it's still on that horizontal shelf, right?
Yep. And that's what drives them crazy. That's why they need a tilted shelf to be flat.
Well, the only bit I disagree with it is when you say they need. Because actually, saying that they need this would be to lend credence to it as a useful thing that they're extrapolating out. The people we are having this discussion with, they don't have any need for any of this stuff, right? It is not useful to them. Do you know what I mean by that? They're not the cartographers. They're not creating the systems.
I do not disagree with you on that. They do not have a genuine need. Yeah. But just like a heroin addict needs heroin.
Now you're talking. Yes, this is more akin to train spotting, like a heroin addict. Yes, now we're talking the same language.
And that's the context I was using need as, not that this is something inherent and necessary.
Your
a heroin
need
addict does need heroin.
For the folly, it needs their attention. But it's not for practical ends. It's not for practical application. There is no, what did you call it, real need. Yeah, that's why people hate me at the moment, isn't it? Because up until this point, on both sides, there was a point where they could feel like they were important for having this information. It made them special. And I'm taking that away from them, aren't I? So when Neil's like, oh, people are deserting us from the chat, and you're like, yeah, kind of. These purges are necessary every now and then. You've got to get rid of the old dead wood from a YouTube point of view. You know, you can't just stick to doing the same thing. You've got to evolve with the times. So from a certain perspective, there's always a bit of purging that has to be done. You know, like a caterpillar turning into a cocoon to relinquish that particular part of its life, right? There's going to be a certain amount of loss in that process and a little bit of pain. But I can cope, and it's a necessary evil. You know, the people that we're walking away from were not to our benefit either, right? The reason we get persecuted, Neil, is because of those people that are walking away. So, if you were squeaky clean, you wouldn't have a conspiratorial outlook being ascribed to you.
I see what's happening here with that heroin analogy, because Nathan, you're the guy telling a heroin addict that's going through major withdrawal, you don't need this bag. Are you kidding me? That's what you're doing to people by telling them, you're irrelevant right now. You don't need to be part of this debate. No. Don't tell me what I need. I need to debate this. And you need to look at my destructive dichotomy.
Well, see, it's both sides of the debate, right? It's the flat earthers and the globers. They're addicted to the debate. It's their harem.
And we're not saying you can't do drugs. We're just saying you can't do drugs at this bar.
And that's a good one, Liam. I like that. And this bar is a drug-free bar.
Now, as much as I hate to agree with that analogy, you are correct. We're not saying you don't. We're not saying don't take the heroin, right? If you want to argue about this shit, you feel free, right? What we're saying is this bar doesn't like that. We don't like heroin addicts here. Go away. You do whatever you like, but just don't do it around us, okay? Right? Sniff your own farts elsewhere. We think you stink, and you do.
Yeah, but at the same time, that addict will tell you how good he feels when he takes that shot.
Dude,
they want to tell you how good it is.
Oh my God, the levels of dopamine that's released when you get someone in a gotcha is probably outstanding.
I like comparing it to the dopamine release that you naturally induce. Obviously, chemically, you're trying to replicate that with any drug. There's something that you're trying to increase the level of a natural ability to give you anyway. Otherwise, your brain wouldn't respond to that particular stimulus. It's an enhancement when you talk about it with things like a heroin addict by comparison. But when you talk about the dopamine release, suddenly I go, yeah, this is all worthwhile. Us talking about it in those contexts that might be demonetizable, when we're talking about people being metaphorical heroin addicts, you go, no, this is an addiction. It's worthy of being compared to heroin addiction, because that's what we're dealing with. And on one side, we're suffering withdrawal, right? That's what the people like Bev and Ed the Bear and all those dicks, they're suffering withdrawal, right? There's another side, our own side, where they're living in hope, right? The pretend indifference. Well, screw you guys, I'm out of here kind of attitude because I can do my drugs elsewhere. You're like,
Yep.
Okay, but that's fine too. But ultimately people around us were pointing at us as a group. That's all of us, because we were represented, as much as you're going to hate to hear this, by your Dans and your McToons. They're part of this pond. I always knew it by metaphor. You've heard me describe it that way many times. Now we're going, we want to bridge out of this fucking pond. It's horrible. It's full of heroin addicts.
Exactly. On both sides.
I'm glad we're talking about this because we have spoke about this for a while now. When I go back to the Alan Watts video, Nathan's gives some quotations. I put a video up about how the brain reacts biologically in certain circumstances when you're challenged or belief systems are challenged. It is a psychological dilemma that they're in, but it's a natural thing that's happening to them, a natural response. And I think if we're talking about it now with the addiction now, but I think we could go down this road a little bit deeper into how the brain works and what in a psychological way and now, expose them why they're behaving this way. Let's get biological with this now.
Well, it's just an extra avenue that I'm going to go on camera to say this because I'm delighted you've just said that one, Deck, right? The reality is, this is all part of flat earth debate. When I look outward on you can suggest maybe I'm looking down my nose at you, freaking idiot conspiratard. I am. But we're also going to psychoanalyse you because you're quite interesting. Like, it's fascinating. I'm sure there's audience, the majority of the people who have stayed, let's be honest, the majority have stayed. There's a few handful making vocal awareness of their departure because they want to go and sniff their own farts and they're sick of us telling us how horrible they are, right? But the rest of us, we're still here, right, going, but look, this evergreen subject sprouts new life, and how interesting it is to look from the outside in on the nature of the conspiratard, by comparison, heroin addicts that we're describing currently. These people suffering their dopamine withdrawal. Fascinating stuff. Endless swathes of YouTube material for me with my YouTube hat on from this subject. And it's the reason I picked it. I had this, not rehearsed, but I had this conversation recently with my wife in regards to what makes flat earth evergreen. And this is akin to that, right? We're going, well, isn't it interesting how addicted to these people are? And when we literally turn around because of our own genuine indifference, that's when the blonde shows the most interest. That seems paradoxical. Yeah, that's right. But what's that? Next guy figured that out 5 years ago, and you look over and he's got 3 women hovering around him. Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? When you're looking from the outside in. They want us even more, don't they? The dweebs especially at the moment. And it is kind of sickening, and it's that loop that you're literal. I tried to describe this with Dave, right? When I called him an unfuckable dweeb, the analogy was starting to develop in this regard, right? The more desperate you are to affirm your religious belief, to debate with me, to make this my subject, to pour scorn on it, and the less engagement you get, the more desperation by geeky, ugly bloke metaphor seeps out of these people. So by comparison, the less fuckable they look to the blonde. Yeah? The guy showing utter indifference because he's got other shit going on, he's the one that the blonde goes, why isn't he paying attention to me? Every other leery, ugly bloke I despise is, but he's not. Well, let's find out why. You know what I mean?
My God, that plays into
That's what happened to me.
That people want what they can't have, right?
Yeah.
It's like wearing a wedding ring to a bar. You're going to have people that look at the wedding ring and come after you just because they think you're married. It's insane.
Yep.
Yeah.
See, here's the thing, Nathan. Here's what's happening, okay? Here's what's happening with this. If you had the balls to look at the argument, the destructive dichotomy, you would realize your folly. It's your measurement in question. It is the reason you are running, Nathan. Run the argument through Ted Man's AI model.
Oh,
See what
check
it
it out.
says.
I've got a note passed to me from under the counter. It's from that girl we call Sweaty Betty. Ugh. What's Sweaty Betty say? You know that you're going to be married to me one day. Pay me attention. Meet me behind the bike sheds. Ugh. Ugh. Sweaty Betty.
Sweaty Betty's trying to give you a destructive dichotomy for why if you don't sleep with her, you're a bad person.
So she says. So she says. Now, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with Sweaty Betty. I'm not going to poke. I don't go out of my way to poke fun at Sweaty Betty. But Sweaty Betty needs to go with these unfuckable golems. They need to unite so they can wipe sleeves and go, actually, radii can bend, pi equals 2.
That's it. This is the true globe.
But breaking up is never easy to do, and it is better to have loved and have lost than to listen to an album by Olivia Newton-John.
Hey, I like Olivia. First of all, we never were with them to break up with them. That's number one. They never came in right. Even if you go back and look at Bev never came in right, but you still promoted him and still gave him a shout out and told people to subscribe until he started saying you could do a fall with an angle, right?
Yeah, so that's the problem.
Really
I involved myself in you hit the nail on the head, right? So at one point I did tell Sweaty Betty that I liked her glasses because I did think they were cool, right? They had little hearts on them. And I did say it because I genuinely meant it. So I promoted her in a belief that I had a desire for her. And now she's sitting in the fucking driveway again. She's going to get dragged out that window by a policeman, I'm telling you. It's going to happen. Yeah, we're moving on, Neil, and that's the problem, right? The real problem comes for the ex-wife scenario, right? When the husband moves on. So when the husband goes, not I'm leaving you, not I'm divorcing you, because the woman gets to see him in court, she gets to argue with him, cause him headaches, generally make him miserable. But at some point, the husband disappears and out of their life and is no longer more part of their life. And that's the point that the person goes the most nuts. You know, because suddenly it all hits home. No, this wasn't a joke. You know, when I like to say what I mean and mean what I say. And sometimes I haven't got the words to summarise how I'm feeling because I'm ambivalent in terms of how I'm feeling. Now, at the moment, I have nothing but clarity. We're done with these dweebs. I'm done with this boring ass subject of anti-heliocentrism. Now, from you, the flat earth side of this, you think that means I'm bored with flat earth. And you're like, no. I made a very serious decision. Like all good decisions, it was sat with a good wife, listening and discussing the options available to us as a new wed, soon-to-be family, right? My wife and I discussed whether or not moving into a YouTube career would be a good idea and what timelines and limitations I was going to put on it, right? And it was done very much under the banner of needing to branch into an evergreen subject to achieve that ends. And I picked flat earth, knowing full well it would be an evergreen subject. Now, the only detriment to that decision was censorship, which I hadn't factored in. But the contrast to censorship is that will often get you more dedicated support, longer term support as well, as I found out. That is to say that because people who've paid a couple of quid for memberships that are going to go, I don't want to be around you while this is happening. And to those people, I do have some sympathy. You know, it's like, I understand why you would feel that way, because I am making a mockery of your current emotional state. and nobody likes that. I'm doing it because I'm too callous, too careless, too indifferent to people's feelings when I should be apathetic to my own audience and how they would be feeling. But I'm trying to work my way through something quite complex in terms of explaining our detachment from a subject that I'm still going to be naming and putting above the door because it's absolutely still the relevant title. So there's going to be people who are like, I just want the old school debate. I want you to slay ballers, because all I represented to those people was their inability to shout down and make wrong through argument their oppressors that they'd created in a debate that wasn't necessary. So it's like, okay, well, you've decided that you want to be the righteous in a debate dweeb, in a debate with dweebs. And you're like, I've got to be honest, it's not that fun. I mean, I've come to the midget wrestling a couple of times, and it was fun for a couple of minutes. And don't get me wrong, the midgets are in on the joke, and they get it, and they're full of fun too. But we've been here for an hour now. Let's go. And what do you know? The midgets have gone, no, you must stay. We've got more wrestling to show you. I don't know why midget wrestling's come up as the analogy in this instance, but I thought it was funny. We're having a laugh. I want to have fun, right? When I first did Flat Earth and there was no censorship and there's just all these crazy people around me with all these weird ideas, it was a right laugh, right? The bonkers people. So much stuff from Flat Earth UK has made it into the book, anecdotally, because the people were so interesting. So it was a good laugh, right? Good fun. When it becomes about the pain and suffering of dweebs, oh God. I mean, it's only in recent times that it's become a bit like that. And it's like, yeah, you're at your limit when you're describing a metaphor of kids having their heads flushed down the bog because they're so bloody boring, to that going, we're going to report you to the police. You're like, oh my God, it's stopped being fun, really, hasn't it? Well, why is that? That's who's in the room. Fucking hell. Let's have a look at you nose snot wiping adenoidal little wanker. I don't want to be around you. Boosh! Fuck off. Get out of my way. Who else we got in here with the lights up nice and bright? Everyone's looking at their shoes. Look up here. I'm looking at you, dweebs. That's what I'm doing right now. I'm going, I don't want you in my life. Boosh! Kick you out. And who are you? Get lost. You're all tossers.
Yeah. You know what happened there? You just reminded me of something. See, I had 2 daughters with this Irish girl and went to prison and she left and everything. And when I came out, I was doing good, but she wanted no part of me. Do you know when she wanted a part of me? When I met my wife that I'm married to now. Once I started paying attention to another girl, then she was all over calling. So you in a relationship with these people, Nathan, right? Now you found another relationship. Earth is measured flat and that's it. You're done. You're content. But now you're piquing the interest of them that you once had a relationship with.
That is human nature, to want what we can't have. And by, the apathetic understanding we're coming to, they can't have us.
Yeah, but until you meet that other person that has your attention, they don't give a crap. Right? It's only when you find that other girl that's when the ex gets, now she can't handle it now. Now it's like, wait a second, he's got somebody else? Oh, no, 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 no.
Right, she can't have that anymore. When she could have you, she didn't want you. Now she can't have you. It's driving her nuts. You see what I mean? You always want what you can't have. It's the grass is always greener on the other side kind of thing.
I was thinking you could maybe do like a Friday phoning, like a Samaritan's helpline for people who want to phone in, who realising that they've got psychological problems, and we could give them some help, maybe.
Oh, what the...
Our problem is that our bar is at the bottom of the high street where all the drug addicts are. So how do we convince the council that this bar should be further up the high street next to the nice restaurants?
Well, because people come by and keep throwing shit in the bar. So it's loaded with shit. It's unappealing.
Which is, if we decide to move out, their whole thing is going to fall apart because the measurements of Earth is what's keeping us all together. If you ain't got the plane of reference, then what are you going to do?
There's also no appealing to these people. It's not like you can turn around to them and say, look, be less fart smelling. These people are what they are. So you can't appeal. If you do appeal to them, it's like me telling Sweaty Betty that she's got nice glasses. It's always taken the wrong way. You give an inch, they take a mile. Again, you just got to detach yourself. These people are unpleasant.
Well, the biggest audience you get is when you're ripping apart a baller, which it still amazes me that people still want that. I don't. To be honest, it's fun, but is it really fun?
Yeah, you just got to go out and find new friends. You've got to go out and branch out and find new people, which is a pain in the arse and effort. Go ahead, John.
I was going to say a heroin dealer has the most heroin addicts around him when he's got heroin. So are we surprised that those
and he hates his customer?
Yes, he does.
People, like when I first found the channel, this was like great because this is what, like one deck said that time, this is what I always wanted. And he was so excited that you told people to shut him up before you knew who he was, before you knew how the panel operated, right? Was what everybody wanted to do, but maybe they didn't have the language to do it. So everybody, what happens is they live their baller killing life vicariously through you. And that's what's still going on. So in other words, you're not wanting to go to modern day debates. That hurts them because what they can't do and was being done by you, they're not getting that fix anymore.
Yes, like Nathan Miyagi,
dopamine.
Like Mr. Miyagi, innit? Wax on, wax off. That's what Nathan's like. You know what I mean? Mr. Miyagi.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, but they're not getting what they want. Their desire is to see Nathan rip apart a baller. That's what they want. They want that fix. And when Nathan says, you know what, I just don't want that anymore, that's going to cause a lot of pain.
It'll still happen. So I keep saying this, it'll happen while I'm out on my tour. So what will happen is somebody will be all friendly. Oh, they won't. I normally pick up on the vibe from this. When I used to get people handing me slots to go out and talk to the press, you talk to them and I would try and build a bit of rapport, having worked in that sort of sector of life, generally speaking. You've got to build a bit of rapport with people to build up a bit of trust with people. And when they're looking to screw you over, they're normally telling in terms of how they respond to you. So that might go out the window a little bit depending on how many people I've got to contact. So speaking of which, right, if you're listening to this as an audience member, firstly, thank you to all the people who've sent me names of people that they want me to go and talk to. It doesn't mean I'm going to get to talk to them, but it means I'll at least put a message across to them that there's an intent from me, or more specifically from one of my audience members that have suggested them, right, if I'm unaware of who they are. But that will be the branching out that will inevitably lead to somebody who wants pain relief rather than just your average Joe who's just, flat earth, interesting. Tell me more, right? Out of genuine intrigue, because they're indifferent to it. They're like, those are the people that will be like, I don't care, I'll talk to a flat earther. I've still got to pay my mortgage tomorrow. Does it matter? Those are the people that will 9 times out of 10 interview me. But the 1 out of 10 will be, I want this person to be shown wrong. This causes me cognitive pain. So I've brought Dickhead here along unexpectedly. So you're like, okay, fair enough. But that will result in giving those people just that tiny little bit that they really wanted to see all the time. And that'll probably keep them engaged where I actually don't want them to be. It's like, if you're the people that we're taking the piss out of the moment, as much as I do express that I should have more sympathy and apathy towards you, sympathy and concern, and empathy rather, that's the one, not apathy, empathy. But I kind of can't. It's like, no, I do actually want to see the back of you, because you're the problem when it comes to me as an individual, selfish though it sounds, getting ridiculed for being a flat earther. I know why. Now, I can take ownership of my own part in that. Like likewise, detaching myself from heliocentrism, took ownership of my niece learning heliocentrism from me. While I taught her as she was a little tiny girl standing in her backyard, looking through a telescope at the stars with me telling her what they did. So from that perspective, I can still go, I should feel worse for these people. But you're like, no, times have changed. As much as the subject is awesome, and this is one of the reasons why it's awesome, because it's ever changing. Flat Earth is constantly changing, and this is one of those changes. Now, if there's people, and it's always going to be made about people, right? It's social media that we're doing this via, YouTube or whatever, TikTok, it doesn't matter. But my point is that we're doing it in a way that involves directly the people who engage or don't engage with whatever it is that's the subject matter. Now, when we say, no, well, this subject matter's changed, something's altered it. What's altered it in this case? Well, flat Earth measurements have altered it fundamentally in terms of how I approach it. However, for the better, for the considerably better, for the comfort and peace of mind of everybody, for the people who are saying, I want a silver bullet, not because they want to go and fight with it, because they want to stick it under their pillow and then forget about it, probably never ever using it. But they've always got it, and it's never going to leave their possession. In fact, it's underneath them while they sleep. You know, that's what flat Earth is for me. But it means that I'm not taking that gun on a battlefield. It's under my pillow, most of the time being ignored. You know what I mean? Now, eventually it'll go under the bed. Eventually it'll get handed down to the kids. But I don't want anyone to fire that bullet. You know, because that could only cause death or pain, and that's its intended purpose, right? Well, upon getting it, you acquire the silver bullet and go, I'm looking around and seeing lots of people have already got these. They just didn't realise it. In fact, is it just me, or is every single bullet in existence silver? And I'm now turning around and saying, look, they're silver. And everyone's going, don't point out that they're silver. Give me a silver bullet.
That's a good one. Everyone always was silver. That's right.
And and the argument that they're fighting the war over is the bullets are wood. God bless.
I hope people give me a few more names. That was the only thing I wanted to add to that little bit. If you're watching and you've got anybody that you want me to go and talk to, give me, because I've got a list of about 20 people. About 5 or 6 of them have got email addresses to immediately be getting on with, but I would imagine that'll only get me on 2 or 3 shows. So if I can get that list up to 100 people, I'll start my tour off on maybe 10 different platforms that I hadn't encountered previously. So hopefully that's what I'll achieve, but I need about 100 names to achieve that ends, in my reckoning. So hopefully a few more people will say, oh yeah, actually I watched this YouTuber, you've never mentioned them. Someone recently added Lowcast of the Podcast Eaters or whatever. We've covered them before, but they weren't someone that I was in, tune with. But I got their contact information. I think it was someone from the panel, actually. But again, I'm like, wicked. Yes, that's exactly what I need, because I'd forgotten all about them. So yeah, hopefully more people will give me names of people that I can contact, or get Paula to contact more likely, so that I can get on their shows and talk about the book. That's the next step.
Now did you just want names, or did you want us to send them a message to see if we can get on their show?
Just names.
Because that's simple.
Names, or one better
information, Neil.
One better than names isn't actually you contacting them. It's you having their contact information. So if you can pass that on, I can then say to Paula, these first 5 have all got the email addresses already attached to them. So for Russell Brand and for Locust Podcast Eaters, or whatever they're called, Bro Sanchez and a couple of others, I've already got their email addresses. So I've put them in front of the top of the list, because obviously they're going to be the ones that get prioritised, because I've already got contact info. But I don't need it. It's just it just means research for me or Paula when it comes to actually contacting all these people and saying, I want to send you a digital copy of the book, one-time use, and hope that I can entice you to becoming an affiliate. And you can have a link below that will earn you 30%. So get me on your show, talk about the book, make 30% from it, and hopefully we'll all do nicely. And that will be put out there, and for every 10 that I contact, it's like sales again. It's just me selling a book. So sales rules apply. I know exactly what to do. It's just I need names. I need to build up a database, basically, of names that I can contact to try and get me on their shows. And that just means people who are watching YouTube, everybody who's watching this is a YouTube engager, whatever you call them. So just tell me, just say, I want you on this person's podcast, and I'll add them to the list. If you've got the contact info, even better.
I don't know if this is worthy of your time, really, but as a part of your sales pitch, it is reaching that time when Flat Earth is going to peak again in the, what is that called? Where, we've noticed the cycle like every 10 years, right?
Yes.
It comes back up and it has, like, it's that time. It's going to start building again.
Yes, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And for the most part, there's a lot of people like Jaron who I see or perceive as having been bullied out of the subject at the last hurdle. And I hate having my example involve somebody who's called me a shill and called me a scammer be the example, but it is just an example, so let's not worry about it too much. But Jaron got to the very last hurdle for the full 10 years and then fell at the last one. You're like, what a shame, right before we were really laying it on thick for our own self-recognition of how flat Earth is measured by all parties. Right at that point, that transition point for most of us who are listening to this now, me included, you're like, that was the point that you decided to sell out. There's no other words for it. Oh, what a sad state of affairs. Oh well.
Hold on, wasn't he boasting of how he was more popular than you? Right?
I don't know what that's got to do with it. He isn't. I've had more views than him.
So why would he back out then? He was popular, right?
Because it wasn't enough. I can totally appreciate why, from a financial point of view. Whenever I talk to Jaron, it would always end up turning into a conversation about how he can develop more money from the subject. So, right from the very first conversation I had with him about how much he could populate the videos with ads, yeah, and things like that. It was always about how much finance he could extract from the subject rather than the subject itself. Now, obviously, if you've watched Jaron, you appreciate that he produced content and was capable of producing stuff for YouTube. So it wasn't just about the money as in, like, that was his only ever thought. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that his focus on was monetizing all of the efforts. Now, because I'm not mercenary, or I like to think I'm not just here for the money. I appreciate I need it. I appreciate I'm poor. But when it's bad, yeah, I might stick my hand out and beg. But I'm not about to desert the subject as a result of it being financially hard. And it is.
Right.
Now, given that I have more views than Jaron, considerably more, I would suggest that I got considerably more ad revenue out of it than he did. And I was more savvy about how to maximise the ad revenue. I mean, I did pass these tips on to Jaron, but, he didn't necessarily employ any of them. Most of the time I'm contacting these people, I'm trying to dangle out a branch of, I can help you do better. Like, I understand most people are going to ask what's in it for me. Like, with the contacting people to have me on the show, or like, what's in it for you is 30% of book sales. That's all you need to hear if you're that type of person that's very monetarily inclined. Now, my point is that I'm just talking about, to answer your question, when it comes to Jaron, if you're not making that much money from it, even with a greater subscriber base, less videos being put out, and more super chats during the videos, it probably still wasn't enough. Financially, most people overstretch themselves. Most people don't go, we're going to be poor, let's rein it right back, and still end up accumulating debt anyway, just not a horrendous amount. Like, over the last year, between me and my wife, we racked up 3 credit cards. Now, don't get me wrong, all of them were under £1,000, but it ended up being like all of the money I got from profit from microphones, every dime going on those credit cards at the end of the year. And that was being as frugal as possible. Now, if I was Jaron, I'd look at that and go, this is no life. Fuck this. I can make more money by going and doing it this way. So that's the way I'm going to go.
He's not making more money by going back to the ball. Well, at least that's what he's crying about. So who knows? But
well, of course, he's always crying about not making enough money.
He went back on the globe because he wasn't making enough money and he wanted to make more money?
Yes. How to monetize your time if Flat Earth is being ever more suppressed and going down in the viewership towards the end of the cycle that John just described. So obviously that cycle has a dip as well as a peak. Well, at the lowest of the low dip for the engagement, interest, and therefore money you can extract out of the subject would be the point that people jump off, right at the bottom of the market. Now, my dad, when it came to describing this exact pattern with shares, would be like, that's when you want to buy them. Buy them when they're cheap. You know what I mean?
Time out, not to change the subject, but Nathan, this is the Uncut and After Show, right?
No, we're live.
So this is what's that?
Yes, it is.
So it's not going out to YouTube right now, right?
Not now, but this will. I'm not going to edit this.
I understand that. So how is somebody responding to me in live time?
I don't know. They're obviously in the Discord server.
They're not.
Or they could be on the members feed. It's still being sent out to members, right?
No.
Is it?
No.
No, it's not. I know it. Yeah, there's something nefarious going on here. There's no way this particular person should even be hearing this conversation, let alone responding to it.
They're just in the Discord server. Anybody can join. They're in the Discord server, Neil. Who cares?
Is it possible that somebody has put a dummy in the Discord server?
I look at all the dummies in there. They're not, not the...
So Neil, there's a mole in
no
G+.
freaking...
There's no mole. There's an open door. This is a bar. You understand that, right? Anybody can walk in.
I understand that. But freaking how?
Secret Flat Earth Club.
He's not in Discord.
Anyway, Neil.
Somebody could be stealing your liquor.
Just Neil wants to engage in the gaslighting he's being subject to.
We just haven't got any heroin, guys. So if you come in, you're straight.
No. Listen, I was somebody that's not on this panel or on our panel responding to something we're talking about right now.
Yeah, Neil's saying there might be somebody stealing your liquor next. I think that's what Neil's trying to say.
Look,
On the mall.
Have you asked them, Neil?
You're all a bit young. You've all had a bit too much to drink. Now, fuck off.
No, I'm going to tell you right now, the people I'm reading, Alpha Murphy 72, Diego 76, East is West is a suspect because I never heard him. Lion who I've heard, Fat Earth Cafe I know, Mickey Mess I know, Mike I know, Nathan Oakley I know, Steve A I know, Vitaly Z I know, Sasha I know. So unless he's able to get this without being on our panel or Discord panel. And I'm going to freaking find out who the traitor is in my family.
Oh, I love gaslighting. It's so much fun.
We got a Fredo in the house.
Well, with the bar analogy, you should have went with it, Neil, and said that somebody was stealing your liquor. That's what's going on, if Neil's right.
Yeah, somebody's stealing liquor, but in order to steal it, they have to be lining up with somebody on the Discord server. Somebody's got to be feeding him this. So there's a traitor in the family.
Okay, then.
I think you remember in Hot Fuzz when the two characters used to debate each other whether the shotgun above the counter was loaded or not.
Yes.
There's a certain element of mystery around it. I'll get back with people coming here and you haven't debated for a while. I think, well, I've heard that this is where debates are. If they stick around long enough, eventually the shotgun will have to come out.
Yeah, that's why I'm giving people an idea, a hypothetical idea, of that guy that'll be wheeled out to give pain relief to the host of the show that's communicated with my wife and been sold the idea of getting 30%, whereas they don't want 30% of the book. What they want is pain relief, right? Now, heroin costs more than £30 for the amount they need. Do you know what I mean? By metaphor. And, you know, getting the 30 quid isn't the same as getting the skag, is it? Well, that'll be when they get that fulfillment, that'll be the scenario now, it might not be that scenario. It might be that my spidey sense when it comes to people who want to screw me over in a media capacity is on overdrive, and I go, no, I've decided that when I detect that these people are going to wheel out a wanker, I'm just not going to have that as an interview. I'll just turn those interviews down. In other words, because it'll be a third party, probably my wife, that's acquiring them. It might be the case that I go, well, actually, I'm not going to do that one because I've now spoken to them. You've given me their contact information, so they've said they want me on. So I've started emailing them, and I don't like the responses I'm getting. You know, I smell a rat. So it might not be the case that happens. But as you call it, right, that's flat Earth debate. We know there isn't one, which on one hand makes us more dangerous. But on the other is just that shotgun still hanging over the bar, as you put it. It's a very good analogy. People are like, well, you say there's no debate. You're like, well, did you want a debate? It's like, because you don't know, you're looking at a ninja, but you are.
Well, according to certain people, Aaron has used my destructive, flat earth destructive dichotomy. Right? He's used it and presented it to Flatsoid. Said it pains me to have to agree. The argument is correct.
Yeah. I mean, that's good. I think these people should be going out and finding their counterparts. Find your dweeb. He or she is out there for you. And
Find your dweeb.
Well, they should go find their new person.
If you go train spy long enough, the right train will come up.
Yeah, exactly. Eventually, these people see each other. They wipe their noses on their sleeves, and they go, "Oh my God, this person understands me."
Don't get like me.
Like you say, though, Nathan, the door's always open now. As the withdrawal symptoms get worse, you might find people knocking on to see if you've got any gear. You know what I mean?
Got any gear?
Nathan flushed all the gear. What are you talking about?
Wishful thinking. He's got gear in there somewhere.
You always have a private stash and a private bank of money. So we know it's in there, Nathan. Now answer me with this flat earth measured destructive dichotomy now.
Oh, Betty.
I am having a debate. So they might start banging the door down now, looking for that debate. Because they've been scared to hell to come in for how many years now?
Yeah, but see, it doesn't matter. If Kieran or McToon, they need Nathan's attention on this. See, it's very important that Nathan gives this measured flat destructive dichotomy a debate. If Nathan don't give it a debate, then it's nothing. I'm fishing right now, guys. I'm fishing.
Fishing for clues.
Casting my line. What might have happened is I might have scared him off. So now he's not going to respond because, oh, shoot, he's finding out that I'm listening in. So probably scared him off a little bit.
Yeah, you're still doing this for the sport, Neil. I get the general gist that you keep appealing to wanting to be important in this regard as well. Like, no, we had to start the foundations falling apart and all that sort of stuff.
No. I quickly realized where you were going when with the building analogy. I understood. Yeah, it doesn't matter because when it's cracked, it's going to fall. Doesn't matter how many people. I mean, now if you go in there and you start making the crack bigger somehow, that's different. But just pointing to it doesn't speed up the process. It actually brings attention to the crack and brings the building repairmen in. So I get it.
Yeah, like when they seen the sextant, they all ran out and got globe sextants.
What?
Oh, sextants, they found their dweeb. Picture that. Picture anybody that does not have anything to do with the ocean running out and buying a sextant. That's not dweeby. I don't know what is.
Yeah, 10th man.
No, see, but 10th man, he went. He had boats. He, he was at one time on the sea, so
Oh,
he
I didn't
wanted to
know
look
that.
into it a little further. Yeah, 10th man had a few boats.
And John, he had a a rubby dinghy life raft preserver, mate. To bring his eye level down to sea level, horizontal with the GP of the luminary.
Which John you talking about?
I'm sorry, when Elder Bear brings, Elder Bear, he's always going on about 10th man and John and what John said about the dip correction.
Okay.
Fucking, it just makes me laugh.
Nobody's using a sextant on a raft. Okay? Nobody will ever use a sextant on a life raft.
Neil, can you remember when Nathan debated Josh on it? Was it Earth Awakening, something like that? And with Patrick Gunnels. And the guy said, no, you don't need a horizon, you just need a table.
Yeah.
Yes.
Snooker table. Funny thing is, though, the snooker table's not curved.
Well, is that the same guy that when he exited gas pressure out of a container, he said the air? I think it was the same guy.
It was, but he didn't say V, he just said
Air. What he was basically saying was what Brenda says: step outside. Here you go, gas pressure without containment. Even though I'm in a contained system, I'm speaking about existing gas pressure. Just step outside.
Don't forget the gradients, Neil. Got pressure gradients. Right. Obviously not contained the
Hold on a
pressure if
second.
it's grade.
I'm sorry, one day. Do we need to worry about this stuff?
No.
Does it have anything to do with it being measured flat?
No.
Yeah, I like you thinking, Neil. That's just what I was thinking. Obviously,
What about the scientific method?
Yes.
No.
Were you planning on making any discoveries, Neil? Did you have a phenomena you needed to study?
No, but it seems very relevant that it's in this topic even till this day.
Yep, true.
What's the status on speaking about COVID-19? Is it like detrimental? Because somebody in chat said science debunked COVID-19. And somebody else said, why would you say that? To get the channel taken down? Now, I don't know if that's possible. Where are we with that? Is it like...
It's called Fed posting. It's saying things that would prompt federal officers to engage your activities and to observe them.
That's got to be all over now, for crying out loud.
I hope so.
I watched your video again, Nathan. You put the clips on of the song you wrote. It looked good.
Yeah, what song was that from anyway?
I mean, if you listen to it, is, I'm not saying it. The more you listen to it, it is quite a catchy tune. That
no, it is. But he said it was from Weezer.
No, I took the premise was to replace the lyrics in Weezer, and then after I'd written it, I'm like, this is actually quite good. Let's see if I can put it to some different music. So I got in touch with One Deck and said, can you put this to some different music? So then Suno, or whatever it's called, came up with that based on the lyrics. But if you listen to it, you can hear, I've got 2 tickets to Antarctica, baby. Well, I've got 2 tickets to, what is it? Iron Maiden. I got 2 tickets to Iron Maiden, baby.
Right. Yeah, but the name of the song was something Dirtbag?
Teenage Dirtbag is the original Weezer song. Mine's called 9/11 Dirtbag. Huh?
No, it's Weezer something.
Weezer.
Or something.
Teenage Dirtbag by Weezer.
But anyway, it looks great now you put that to it, and I know what you mean, but it has got a feel of that song, like you said the other day, and it is catchy after 3 or 4 listens.
Yeah.
It's not Weezer, it's Wheatus. Wheatus.
Wheatus. Is it Wheatus?
Yes, you drive me crazy because Weezer is a different band than Weatus.
Okay, Wheatus. My bad.
Get your music correct. It's like saying the freaking... it's like trying to say Simple Mind is the Beatles.
Nathan, we'll have to scrap it. Get rid of the video.
When I did attempt to sing it before... I did release these actually to members. So I've got versions of me singing it like Wheatus.
Oh, yeah, I heard that. Yeah, I heard that.
Are you a member?
I must be if I've heard it, yeah.
Yeah, these are both members only. So I did 2 takes of it. One I put through a load of reverb and the other I didn't. I won't play it all, but here you go. This is a taste. His name is Duran. I have a talk with him. He calls me a shill. Got paid talks in half an hour. Oh, how fools flock in sandals and socks, but he doesn't know how it can. There you go. So that's to the actual Wheatus song. In terms of its composition, it is just a parody of Wheatus, whereas what One Deck achieved was same lyrics, but to this.
His name is Duran, I have a talk with him. He calls me a shill, got paid talks in half an hour. Oh, how fools flock in sandals and socks.
you get the general idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
good
just got a
stuff.
bunch of clipping, but if I was in Discord, you're telling me I would have heard it better?
Yeah. Anyway.
I liked it. It was pretty good.
Yeah, good stuff.
Yeah, I really appreciate you producing it. One deck.
Yeah, no worries, mate. Yeah, no problem, mate. Yeah, anything, mate. Yeah. I was like that. Oh, I wasn't that keen. But I was a little bit keen. I thought I wanted to try a few different options, but then I've run out of options. And then I thought, well, I'll just send that to Nathan and see what he thinks about that, you know. And then the more I've listened to it, and you've said, yeah, it has got. It's probably it was the perfect track.
I think that's what we should call these people. Flat Earth dirtbags and Globe Earth dirtbags.
Crazy, isn't it? Like we said earlier, though, I always go back to the Eratosthenes and the Alberuni. I mean, it's so embarrassing now that if you are a glober and you're using that as evidence for your globe, I mean, how embarrassing is that? Especially now you've realised that it's a flat Earth. No, but you must know that you're measuring, you know, if you're a glober, if you're McToon or somebody that you know, someone like that, for instance, they know exactly, or McKeegan, because he won't talk to me about it, because he knows. It's a distance measurement and an angle measurement. All the rest of it is mathematics and presuppositions. Now, as a glober, that's your proof of a globe. I mean, how embarrassing is this?
As a glober, your proof of a globe is flat Earth measurements. That checks out.
Yeah. It's true, though. That is the truth about the matter.
What was Dr. Blitz's proof?
I'm not sure. That's why I wrote the first poem. Yeah, that's why I wrote that poem, the globe is flat. That's when all that was sort of coming to light at that time. Like, you start looking into what's the globe proof. This guy's measuring angles and distances. They're actually measuring the globe flat. That's what they're doing.
Well, according to Blitz, that's not true. You can get an elevation angle from the curved Earth.
But at that point, at that point, that's where you go into. You can't have a discussion after that, can you? Really?
No, you can't, because it's not an angle.
You can't. You can no longer have a discussion with the person at that point.
But you know, it's crazy.
That's why.
You know,
well, it's not an angle anymore.
Like
if you're saying that, it's not an angle. If you're saying that you can get it from a curved Earth, then we're not talking about an elevation angle anymore.
Yeah, DI.
I mean, but you can, can't you? Like, you can, because you could. It's you can get if you're taking an elevation angle off of uneven land, that technically that's what you're doing. It's just that it's not
uneven.
Continuously
he said curved, not uneven.
Maybe you're not, are you? The tool doesn't measure the ground that's directly touching your feet. When you acquire the angle, you're not using the surface of the grass you're standing on, but you're using the terrain where it meets the sky in terms of the flat planar reference. You can utilize that to form an angle with. So in the most real sense of the word, the ground is forming the point that you're utilizing an Earth measurement from. That's the horizon, because that's formed with the ground. But you're saying, well, with grass I'm standing on all vertical. How can I get an elevation angle from the grass? Well, you're not measuring it from the grass. There's no grass mirror on the sextant, is there?
Nope. The misconception of what how a sextant is used, an elevation angle is measured, because this idiot said you can get it from a curved baseline. My thing is then it's not an angle anymore. If it's not three straight lines,
Listen.
you get a vertex.
Listen, you can use a bubble sextant for your horizontal. We all know that. But you can also utilize sea level for the horizontal. We all know that. And if you measure an elevation angle in whatever way you want to measure it, you're not measuring Earth curvature. You're measuring an angle. So there.
Unless you want to deny that the horizon's formed with the ground, which you're welcome to do.
Which Anthony Riley does. Not the ground.
We can't describe the horizon without bringing the surface of Earth into the situation, can you, really?
I'm sorry, what were we navigating again?
The
The
table
surface
on
of
the,
Earth?
boat, on the boat.
Imagination land.
The imaginary horizon, horizontal.
The tangent.
That's what I'm saying. They fight and fight and fight over different ideas of what the elevation angle is. Yeah, we can stand up a mountain and we can get an elevation from. Yeah, well, why are you measuring an elevation angle? You can go measure angles if you want. That's great. You're not measuring the curvature, though, are you? No. Right. Okay, then. See you later.
Well, I've looked at a few definitions since they added on to the Sustainable by Design one. And I have one that says the earth that the observer is standing on. So what are you going to do with that? You're going to tell me that's not the ground?
Makes me laugh. So many of the political commentators I listen to are dead set against the globalist agenda. But to their mind, Earth's still a globe, but they're against the globalists.
Are you referring to what I said?
No, sorry, just in general.
Okay. Because no, when they could think it's a globe when it says on the earth the observer is standing on. If they want to think that earth is a globe, then that's fine. But what are we establishing with an elevation angle? What are we trying to do?
We're not.
So,
but what Sensual Goat's saying is, for the colloquialist, great word, you take it to the Bill Clinton, is it defense? I think it's Bill Clinton, where it stops being about whether or not you shagged this girl and whether or not you understand the meaning of is. So you take it from a realm of filth into a realm of language, right? It's a red herring. So it's not about how we define what an elevation angle is, but they can take it to a place where it's the semantics of us coming to an agreement about how the language is used. Well, no. What it is a measurement with respect to Earth's surface that you'll make if you don't want to die. What's that? Nobody's doing this out on dinghies. Are they not? I mean, I can literally show you a TikToker that's navigating currently with a sextant in a dinghy. What the fuck are you talking about? If I was out on a lifeboat, that's the most likely place that I'd want to be using a sextant, because the chances are the GPS system's gone down with the ship I've evacuated. But what's that? We aren't measuring it from dinghies. No, you insignificant little prick, and I, likewise, aren't measuring anything.
that's a good point, Nathan. I never realized that. But an idiot that's never been out to sea and thinks he's relevant will say something like that. Like, who the heck has ever taken a sextant on a lifeboat? What was that went down with the ship? Oh, so you never did, and you think that nobody's doing that. Way to show your hands.
You wouldn't even bring a sextant into the conversation if he was trying to describe and express to somebody about how globe Earth was measured. You wouldn't bring an elevation angle into the conversation. It would wound you.
You're on a boat and you just want to figure out where the bloody hell you are because you've drifted all night while you've all been sleeping this life raft, right? You all wake up, there's four of you in it. There's a blonde, pretty woman. There's me, one deck, and there's this adenoidal prick that wants to turn angles and measurements into semantics and language. And when this person says, nobody's ever going to use a sextant on this lifeboat, and me and one deck look at each other and go, we could drown him. No one would know. And the blonde goes, who are you talking to? Oh, that snot-nosed adenoidal twat that you didn't notice. Oh, yeah, I didn't even see you there.
Well, in essence, we are drowning them.
Like that. Before you use that sextant, Nathan, just tell me what the definition of elevation angle before you actually use it out of this raft. And
No.
It's pathetic, isn't it?
Before you use that sextant, we need to get the boat back up. Because
the
we
dweeb
can't
turns
use
around
it
and goes,
from the lifeboat.
the dweeb turns around and goes, I got signal on my phone. Just give me 30 seconds. I've looked up by Sustainable by Design and they say it's imaginary.
We're going to be saved. The definition's right. We're going to live.
And it truly is a globe, the real globe that my buddy Bev talks about.
They'll be writing to whoever writes the Nautical Almanac next and asking them to copy and paste the Oxford English Dictionary in the back of it, just so they can check some wording and definitions of things before they use it. Yeah, but that's what they do. They want to, like I said, they want to argue about the ins and outs of how a theodolite operates, not what it's actually doing and measuring a bloody angle and elevation angles, vertical, horizontal distances. That's its function. That's what it's doing. It's not measuring curvature.
No,
Doesn't measure curvature.
one deck, a theodolite measures curvature in degrees over distance.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, you're correct. Which has got nothing to do with measuring curvature. Well done.
It's showing you a curved distance in degree. It's showing you a curved arc in degree as you travel through the distance with a theodolite. Don't you get it?
Unbelievable.
If I have two theodolites facing each other on a piece of paper,
and put an arc underneath them for the curve of the Earth that I'm just presupposing,
life's a
everything
ball.
works out fine. And then if I get the distance between two objects and get the difference in the vertical height of the two objects with the distance apart from them, I can infer that that's because the Earth is curved. After measuring the...
No, when they say that, why is it, I got two theodolites facing each other and he's got the curved Earth, right? Why is there a deviation? Well, because that's how you drew it. What the frick are you talking about? I'm not talking about what's on your piece of paper. I'm talking about reality. You're talking about what you drew on a piece of paper.
Hang on, over that curved surface, you got an angle greater than 180 degrees, mate. From the surface of the curve.
Therefore, Earth is not flat, it's a globe.
I don't know how they do all this. It's already been done. Let's look at Eratosthenes. He did it for you. You're just copying what he did, measuring Earth flat.
I was going to ask you, when do you think they're going to start pushing back from Eratosthenes? I know they're trying to ignore it now, but when are they going to push away totally from it?
I think they're doing it. No one will talk to me about it, or very rarely. Dave McKeegan won't. Sodbuster didn't want to talk to me about that subject. He was talking about feather lights. I don't want to talk about feather lights. Let's talk about how the Greeks measured the circumference of Earth, and he didn't want to do it.
Wait a second.
They know
That was the to-go-to guy back in the day, right?
Yeah.
So how did it change?
Still is. I mean,
because we recognize that it's measured flat, and he measured it flat.
Yep.
So you're telling me they're shying away from it now, and they don't want to talk to you about it? Wow.
Yeah. Well, there's two people. McKeegan and Sogbuster did not want to. After me asking several times, I wanted to go through it with them. We know your game one deck. Yeah, you do, don't you? And you know what was measured, distance and elevation angles from the surface of Earth. You know it. We know your game. Instead.
We know your game one deck. You wanted to sniff your own fart. Yeah. But listen, sometimes it's good, especially after you eat Chinese food.
I don't know. Curry night tonight.
There's a saying in football that football was a humbler, and it's quite similar in this subject too.
Yeah, which, by the way,
if you put an ant... Go
ahead, one neck.
That's all right.
No, I was just gonna say to Central. I've been getting into that freaking the Premier League. I've been watching a lot of soccer lately.
Oh, you can watch the 3:00 kickoffs in America. We can't in England. Well, I can't because I've got a chipped Fire Stick. But you shouldn't be able to legally.
So Arsenal's like the best, right?
Yeah, I'll be honest, Neil. It was better 20 years ago. If you want to watch the Premier League, mate, you best watch your matches retro football.
Well, I'm just getting into it now. I know the World Cup is coming up soon.
Oh yeah, the World Cup would always be great.
Talking about footballs, if you put an ant on a football, the ant would think the ball was flat, obviously.
Well, according to Riley, you don't care if you're standing on a football. The sextant does not measure the ground at all. No matter what surface you're on, whether it be a football, I forgot the other example they gave, but it have nothing to do with the surface whatsoever.
Does it measure curvature, by any chance?
Nathan is falling for the folly that the terrain, the map is not the terrain. Right? So you fell for it, Nathan. The same way, what was the other analogy he used? How the, I'm going to have to look it up. Can't remember. I don't want to misquote it.
Yeah, again, like it matters. Does it matter that Anthony, hypothetically, if sat in a lifeboat, would deny the ground/sea and sky meeting being formed with the sea? It's not measuring anything to do with the sea, he would say. I'd look at one deck and go, we could drown him. No one would know.
Listen, I don't know what you're measuring, but it has nothing to do with the ocean. Meanwhile, you're surrounded by ocean.
And I'd get the map out and he'd go, we're throwing that in the ocean. Reification fallacy. Okay, yeah, we could definitely drown him.
Rip that horizon mirror off that sextant. We don't need that. Oh, God.
The map is not the terrain. The map is not the terrain.
It's funny, isn't it? It is funny. And we do need to do some psychological videos. Go over, how people respond to these things. Just we have to find something like that. I think I did find one the other week, but we'll have to go through them again and just compare it to. We've been doing that a bit anyway, haven't we? With the Alan Watts, the Rob Ager bits and pieces Nathan played. That was sort of referring to,
propaganda and hierarchical structures.
Yeah,
we're just looking at it from a different perspective. That was my intention for bringing on Rob Ager and people like Alan Watson. It's a different way of looking at the subject that is my departure from being a whipping boy in respect to the analogy of being a lion in a circus, right? Sod that. I'm done with that. Now, the book that's coming out, people will love it. If the people who are of the former mindset that they need to be debating ninjas, they'll look at that book as like the Bible on how to undermine every globe position that you might find yourself in debate, right? So from that point of view, because it's about housekeeping, there's going to be the people who are currently condemning me as we walk away from them and go, "You're redundant, I'm sorry." They're going to be the people who love the book from the Flat Earth side. Now, the people who are like us on the panel now, we don't want the book. We do want to give it to our neighbour who keeps shouting nasty names about being a flat earther over the fence, right? That's the kind of intention for those people when they come along to buy my book. But moving forward, I would rather psychoanalyse the people in the discussion forum, because it's more interesting than the discussion. The discussion ended about 2 or 3 years ago. It's like, what fascination do I have? I keep these screenshots, if I could say it, screenshots on screen, because they're relevant to the guy who comes in the bar and doesn't realise our flat Earth's measured. We'll have a look at one of the pictures on the screen roll, and you'll know how flat Earth gets measured. But do we even notice these pictures going by? Most of the time we don't.
Yeah, definitely that, Nathan. We need to get some, get into the, because it is true. This is, we was mentioning the addiction today. That's a psychological, it's the human body and the human brain reacting in a certain way because of the situation that it's in. Yeah, and this is, biology, psychology. We can attach that now to this. We've come out of there realizing this is what we've been dealing with, and getting dragged into these arguments. Yeah.
Maybe there's some psychology service we can find, so we can put these scenarios to them and get a professional diagnosis.
Maybe not.
We could.
Maybe. Right, with that, though, I'm going to round out this after show. So a huge, massive, enormous thank you to both Discord and G Plus panels for making today's after show possible. And, of course, a massive thank you to all of you for liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing, hitting me up on PayPal, smashing the super chat, all that good stuff. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I will see you all in the next video.
But when you measure it flat, it contradicts that. I'm spitting flat facts and that. And I know you don't like that. Google Maps is flat, it presents elevation profiles like that. I'm a spitting flat earth king. Sentence has a ring, doing my own thing. If earth was a big roast chicken, factually finger licking chicken. We just got the measurements missing. I'm spitting eggs and begs, begging the question lesson. I've said it before, time after time. I'm the spitting flat earth king of rhyme.